I was discriminated against all my life because of my golden child sister. Finally, I got my sweet revenge on my wedding day. I faced discrimination my entire life because of my golden child sister, and she even tried to walk down the aisle at my wedding. Finally, I got my revenge. My parents always favored my sister, and it was far from subtle. If she accused me of something, they'd believe her and punish me. But if I accused her, even with undeniable proof, they'd give her a lighter punishment and find a way to scold me too. My birthday cake always had to be her favorite flavor, and my parents pretend they didn't know I hated it. They always bought her more than me and took us where she wanted, even if it was supposed to be about me. My sister grew up spoiled and used me as a punching bag. At first, she mostly ignored me, but things got worse when we were teens. She ended up with no friends, and her behavior deteriorated. Did her friends move away or ditch her because she was mean? I don't know, because we were never close. My parents boasted about her achievements but never mentioned any issues, whereas they constantly highlighted my flaws as teasing material. I only knew she had no friends because we went to the same school, and I noticed she was no longer with people. Meanwhile, I was fairly popular. My sister realized this and suddenly turned me from an occasional punching bag to someone she needed to take down constantly. She started accusing me and my friends of more things. My parents stopped letting me hang out with anyone, with excuses like, "They're not good people according to your sister," or, "Why are you trying to leave us? Why can't you be like your sister and enjoy family time?" What saved me from complete isolation was my extended family. Most of them lived in the same hometown, and I got along well with my cousins despite some age differences. At one gathering, they invited me to something. I don't remember what, and I sadly replied that I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. When asked why, my kid self bluntly said it was because I wasn't allowed to have friends since my sister didn't have any. This got back to the adults, who apparently tore my parents apart later. I was scolded for lying and grounded for a month, but after that, they gave me some leeway, so it was worth it. My sister changed schools. I guess the humiliation of our extended family knowing her social status was too much, so she demanded to switch, and my parents immediately obliged. Even though it cost them more since the school was further away, she made friends at the new school. However, she never went back to mostly ignoring me. Having felt the power to mess with me and being angry that I told the family she had no friends, she never let me go. My life remained difficult. Her friends would come over and bully me, which my parents called light teasing. I never invited friends over because my parents were awful hosts, or my sister would accuse them of stealing, and my parents would believe her. I did become close to my cousins though, as my parents never dared to treat family that way. Then I got my first boyfriend. I didn't want to bring him home, but my parents insisted. At one point we were separated and he came to find me to tell me my sister was flirting with him. She came over in skimpy clothing, batting her eyelashes, and started telling him how bad I was and how good she was. He was irked and ran off to find me. Of course, my sister told my parents a different story, that my boyfriend had tried to flirt with her, but she naturally refused since she couldn't do that to me. Guess who my parents believed? My boyfriend wasn't perfect, but I immediately believed him for a mean reason. Remember, I was a teen suffering from unfair treatment. I was very resentful and moody and hated my sister as much as she hated me. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about looks. I hadn't mentioned them yet because they weren't relevant. My parents were overweight and liked showing love via food, giving more food, buying treats, etc. My sister was also overweight, whereas I was not. I've always been kind of skinny because punishment often included no treats or snacks. Obviously weight isn't what matters, personality is. But my sister, even then, was already rude and spoiled. Even her flirting attempts were bad because she never learned to work for anything since she could demand, and my parents would deliver. Added to that, the fact that she didn't look like some sexy model, even my self-conscious teen self didn't believe my boyfriend would try and cheat on me with her. Anyway, my parents prohibited me from dating such a horrible boy. I did try to keep going in secret, but it was hard, and the relationship ended. I did get another boyfriend, but again, my sister accused him of flirting with her when he refused her advances. Again, my parents believed her. I tried pointing out how this happened again, but they decided that I was incapable of making good choices and kept picking bad boyfriends. The relationship couldn't handle the Romeo-Juliet situation and fizzled out again. I would eventually get called a slut in high school as I was fine with making out with boys and such but refused to have relationships. Thankfully, it never got back to my sister or parents. My sister did bring one boyfriend home during all this time. He was paraded with pride, and my parents spent every second telling me how good he was and why I couldn't be like my sister and find myself someone like that. Until he stopped showing up and suddenly he was a conniving bastard that tricked my sister. Oh well, and the unequal treatment continued. At this time, she had more spending money, and her curfews were much better than mine. She was free to go anywhere at any time, while I couldn't. If I pointed it out, my parents would say it's because she's older, but when I reached that age, I still didn't have the same treatment she had. And when I pointed it out, they denied they ever said that or claimed it was because I couldn't be trusted like she was, using my sister's accusations against my boyfriends and friends as proof of my bad judgment. Time goes by, and it's time for my sister to graduate. She was accepted into a college, not a very well-regarded one, and she had no scholarship or anything. Again, because only her achievements were told to me, I don't know which colleges she even tried for, so I can't say how badly she was rejected. I do know her grades were bad in school though, because whenever she got a B, we would celebrate. I would usually get good grades, but my parents refused to celebrate, claiming since I always got those, what was there to celebrate? My parents naturally made a lot of fanfare and told her they'd pay for everything. I was relieved she'd be going away. Not that it made my life any easier. She'd always come home every other weekend and somehow stuff kept missing from my room, or some other issue she'd think of to make my life miserable. My curfews were still strict. Eventually, my mom came to talk to me about my impending graduation. I'm only a year younger than my sister. She told me that since they were paying for my sister's college, they had no money to pay for mine, so it would be better for me to start working immediately after graduation and wait until my sister finished university to see if they could afford something for me. Oh, and if I decided to stay at home, I'd have to pay for all my stuff, part of the bills and rent. I pointed out that I could get student loans. Mom said yes, except no, because they were so caring towards me and I had such bad judgment that they would decide if a college was worth my getting into debt or not. I'm not sure how they'd stop me from getting loans, but I didn't ask. Scholarships weren't mentioned. They had no idea what my grades were anymore and never believed in my capabilities anyway. I didn't bat an eyelid. I simply said okay. My mom clearly didn't expect that and kept prying. Maybe she hoped I'd throw a tantrum so they'd have an excuse to never pay for my college, but I said nothing except that I understood their position, thanked them for caring, and that was that. My dad later tried the same, but I also refused to be emotional. You see, after a whole lifetime of their terrible parenting, I never had any expectations towards my education. I knew they would find an excuse to not pay for mine and make my life miserable. I never believed they would eventually pay if I worked and waited for my sister to graduate. I had been preparing for college for a long time. I could barely go out, my friendships were slim, so I had a lot of time to study. And study I did because I saw college as my only chance to be free. Well, the time came, and I worked my ass off and got a scholarship, not to anywhere like Ivy League or anything like law or medical school, but it was a good enough course in a decent college with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would hate it and try to stop me via my parents, I put my achievement on social media at the same time I told them, even forcing myself to thank them in the post. Now they couldn't forbid me from going as they'd have to explain to the family why not. Initially, they were even a little proud and boasted about it, and then I guess my sister got to them and they changed gears and even asked me if I was sure I wanted to go. They let slip that my sister wasn't doing well in college, and since she was smarter and had better judgment than me, I'd suffer worse. I obviously stuck to my guns. They weren't happy but couldn't do anything. College was my savior. I started being happy. I still contacted my parents and visited on holidays and such, but since they refused to pay for anything, I could excuse not going a lot due to money. During this time, I avoided introducing any man to them, and my sister stopped going to college. I know she didn't graduate because, again, they'd have made a fanfare about it. She moved back home, paying no bills or rent, but it's different, my parents said, and started working at the same company as my mom, obviously thanks to my mom pulling strings. This was all presented to me as a point of pride. Almost there, I promise. I met my husband around this time. You know those people who say, if I were in that situation, I'd have done something. My husband is the type who actually does. I'm the type who is meek and a doormat in any situation and then can't sleep at night wishing I had done something, had thought of something witty to say, etc. I'm the person who can't help but cry when I'm angry. My husband is the guy who claps back immediately. He loves drama and loves to resolve it. He's the guy that if he doesn't immediately reply to a slight, you better start worrying because he won't forgive and forget, he's just doing something worse for revenge. He's the one who wanted me to post here and wanted to post on a nuclear revenge board too but decided what we did wasn't nuclear. People were baffled that I got together with him, But just because I was incapable of acting like him due to my upbringing, it didn't mean I didn't like it. I love that my husband does what I can't, and he treats people well as long as they do the same to him. When we discussed marriage, we decided we didn't care much about the ceremony due to our budget, as we'd rather spend on a dream trip to Europe for our honeymoon. As for where to do it, since his family was spread out and mine was still mostly concentrated in my hometown, we decided to do it there. We weren't living too far off either, so we could take some long trips during the weekends to manage stuff. Plus, there was some work flexibility, so we could stay in my hometown for a bit too if needed. We sent out the engagement announcement and the save the date for a few months later. At this point, my parents naturally demanded to meet my man. I wanted to grow a spine and refuse, but was having a hard time. The distance had made me think maybe my parents weren't so bad. Well, my husband looked like I had canceled Christmas when I told him I would at least ensure they were never alone with him. See, he had been getting ready for this. He even bought a high-quality recorder he could hide in a pocket to record it all. He was stoked thinking of all the ways he could refuse my sister's advances, insult her, and then spread the recording of her attempts to my family. So off he went alone and excited to meet them, and came back later euphoric. Babe, you won't believe the awful things they wanted. Babe, we can screw them over so bad. There's so many possibilities. I was confused and wanted to hear the recording, but he smartly told me it was better to listen to him first or else I'd misunderstand him. Well, he went there, and instead of flirting, my parents and my sister sat him down. After some grumbling about not being okay with him, my judgment, etc., they proclaimed they were willing to pay for my wedding on one condition. My sister would walk down the aisle. My parents insisted that my sister would walk down the aisle at my wedding first, in a wedding dress. Their excuse was that it wasn't okay for a younger sister to marry first, so it was only fair if my sister at least had the experience of it, at my venue, with pictures being taken, in the dress, and she'd even have a cake later. My husband will now type his part. Hey, vengeful husband here. Hell hath no fury like a pro-revenge instant karma nuclear revenge lurker when his beloved is scorned. That said, as much as my wife, she's my wife now, paints me as this quick-witted dude, I admit my neurons all but short-circuited when those folks legit suggested that crap like some sort of great gift. Even Troy would rather take in the horse a second time, methinks. Alas, after my brain rebooted, I did have a whole list of insults ready to spew out, but something in my soul whispered in my ear like the devil, string these idiots along. So I said I needed to think, see how my wife, back then fiancée, would react, and then ran out of there before I could give away my nefarious plans. Back to me, the wife. So my husband sincerely recounted how my parents wanted even my wedding to be about my sister, with a grin on his face and the recording to prove it. I was shocked. The distance had softened how badly they treated me, and I thought even they wouldn't go so far. Thankfully, my husband insisting on the angle of revenge helped me not go to a bad headspace. We had a blast thinking up ways to screw them over, from ridiculously outlandish to what we thought was feasible. We then called his much more level-headed brother when we decided on a plan. It involved having 2 venue addresses, giving them the wrong one, etc. Well, the level-headed brother scolded us for it. While he acknowledged he would never be able to convince us to avoid retaliation, he at least showed us that something like that would be hard to pull off. Some of our other ideas were also at risk of getting us sued, so we eventually settled for the most benign plan: act like we agreed, but then hire security and don't let her in. Obviously, if that was all, it wouldn't be pro-revenge. The rest is mostly my husband's doing, but he wants me to do the honors. So here goes. Just important to mention, everything he did was previously discussed with me, and they were our mutual ideas. He went back to my parents, said he probed and thought I wouldn't be down with it. However, he didn't see the issue and, not wanting the family to fall apart, would be down to help them do it. He pointed out that I don't like conflict, so if I was surprised with it, I might not throw a tantrum in front of all the people. On the other hand, marriage is a big thing, so who knew if I'd lash out? Thus, he suggested a compromise. They'd help pay for stuff. This way, I would feel even more pressure to not say anything, as not only would we be public with our families there, but I'd be grateful for the help they gave. He said my parents looked shocked, and my grown sister literally started skipping with joy like a kid, so it was accepted. Importantly, my husband also claimed that due to some bad judgment and past boyfriends, these words were all my idea, and I'm so proud of using their words against them. I was distrustful and controlling and liked to check his phone and stuff to ensure he wasn't cheating on me. As such, it was imperative that nothing of this plan was ever put in writing. For any discussion pertaining to my sister walking down the aisle before me, he'd go over to their house to talk. And so began the months of deception where my parents and sister thought they were tricking me, while my husband and I were milking them. Rather than paying for the wedding, they lay low. Of course, my parents wanted input in everything, including some things that meant a lot to me, like the songs and color palette. My husband would convince them to let it go to keep me in line, but since we never really cared for the ceremony to begin with, everything else was fair game. Or so they thought. Here's what we did. We'd go to check the drink and menu options and then accept the lowest or second lowest priced option. My husband would then secretly take my sister there to try it out and then sigh and say, "It's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we won't get the best options." Cue my sister demanding my parents pay for the best. My parents would then tell me not to worry and they'd pay for the most expensive option. The same was done with the photographer and flowers. My husband handed my sister a bouquet of the flowers we wanted and then sadly expressed how I wanted some other tasteless flowers. Cue my parents telling me they wanted us to go with said flowers and they'd pay for it. When it came to the wedding dress, we hit a minor snag. My parents wanted me to use a hideous dress. Okay, it wasn't outright hideous, but it wasn't my style and wouldn't look good on me. We had planned on saying yes and then simply not using it, but my mom sent me a message about it, so there'd be proof I said okay. We had to go with me refusing to text and standing my ground. My husband went over there and said he'd see what he could do. My sister suggested ruining my desired dress so I'd be forced to wear the other one. He pretended to agree. During all this time, they kept communications outside any text. We made sure that happened by having me reply to my sister when she tried messaging my husband. This solidified the uncontrolling and neurotic claims my husband was making, so they believed it and never risked anything in writing. Some people might not like the thought of their partner going around and talking badly about them to family, but I'm such a doormat that the thought of being painted as this controlling and dangerous person is extremely funny to me, and I egged him on to do it. I guess I have a warped sense of humor. Oh, and my sister did try to flirt with him, but he acted conflicted to really sell that he was with them. My husband would pretend to tell them things without my knowledge, but he never told them we hired security. It was really funny. My husband and I, who had sincerely considered a courthouse wedding to focus costs on our honeymoon, ended up having this extravagant, expensive wedding and barely spent a dime. We called it back to pay for emotional damages from my parents. I think my husband, okay, he just confirmed I'm right, was enjoying the whole trick more than planning our wedding. I didn't think it was possible to witness a guy beaming at the thought of wasting his whole Saturday doing a car trip to discuss wedding details with his in-laws, but here we are. Soon the day came. The plan my parents, sister and husband had come up with was to wait until everyone was seated since the bride always comes out late. They'd have my sister arrive at that precise time to avoid me seeing her and trying to stop it, and she'd walk down the aisle. By the time I heard what happened, it would be too late to do anything. As for my dress, we saved some of the leftover fabric from my dress alterations. My husband took that to my parents' place, my sister still lives with them, and showed them as proof he'd ruined the dress, then said he had to go back to me as I was raging and he needed to calm me down. He told them he'd see them at the wedding. We made sure to keep our real security hidden initially. As the guests and my parents arrived, they only saw a woman with a list of names to check. Only after my parents had settled in did we bring out the actual security, a guy who looked like a bodyguard. We instructed him not to let my sister in and promised a generous tip if he kept our instructions confidential. Soon, the moment arrived. My parents got a text that my sister was less than 5 minutes away, so my dad signaled for the ceremony to start. My bridesmaids had been prepped to follow his lead, so they did without checking with me. After they all took their places, my dad stood at the entrance, waiting for me. During this, a friend not in the wedding party texted me to get ready, to avoid suspicion if my husband or bridesmaids started texting. This friend, my husband's ally, was as eager to stir drama as he was and didn't mind not being a bridesmaid. As soon as my dad took his position, the bridal song began. The doors opened and I entered. My dad was shocked to see me. He tried to look behind me but couldn't see the venue entrance from where we were, so he had no idea what had happened to my sister. Then his phone rang. I saw the caller ID, and it was her. He left me with a mumbled, "Something came up." Gasps and confusion filled the room. The friend on the plan loudly asked what happened. I lied and said tearfully, "He told me it wasn't supposed to be me there." My husband and I had agreed that if my dad abandoned me, I should say that to make him look as bad as possible. The tears weren't just acting. I was genuinely hurt and trying not to cry. The friend then loudly asked, "What did he mean by it shouldn't be you?" So that everyone could hear and spread it. Then she said, "I will go and check," and ran off. We planned this so she could create chaos with the security and prevent my dad from returning to stop the ceremony. Eventually, my mom also left. At this point, my husband's dad quickly ran over and took my arm. He'd been forewarned he might need to. His desperate run to me made me smile. I walked down the aisle to whispers as people discussed what had happened. Some left to check as well. When I reached my husband, all was well. He comforted me, joking that my sad face was so real I deserved an Oscar, and reassured me he'd deal with my parents for what they did. We got married without any further issues. My parents didn't come back. I noticed a lot of people leaving and returning during the party, but no one dared tell me what was happening. Someone whispered in my husband's ear and he went out. He returned later with a thunderous expression but whispered to me that he needed to go hide before he broke character and started smiling. It worked. Here's the summary from friends, family, the security guy and my husband that I got afterwards. My sister arrived in a wedding dress. The security refused to let her in as we had agreed. He told her she must be at the wrong venue because there was already a bride. Yes, we tipped him very well as promised. My dad tried threatening him with the police, claiming he'd never heard of him, so he couldn't be working there. The security agreed to call the police since he was hired by us and was just doing his job. My dad realized it would be too late and tried to demand that he let my sister in. At this point, the friend came over, started shouting and insulting my sister, and asking what was going on, basically stalling. My mom soon arrived, followed by others. By then, the wedding plan was ruined. All my parents could do now was damage control, as everyone who learned about it was horrified they'd try to pull it off. People started screaming and berating them. The three naturally said it wasn't a secret and blamed my husband. When he was called over, my husband put on his best confused look and denied everything. To quote him, "Gaslight, gatekeeper, girl boss, LOL." He denied ever agreeing to such a ridiculous plan. When they insisted he demanded proof, and of course, they couldn't provide any. All the text exchanges they could show were about normal wedding decisions. My sister was scream-crying and apparently sat on the floor kicking her legs like a child. My dad looked like he wanted to hit my husband, but security and other people held him back. Naturally, they claimed they had no proof because my husband told them not to text. My husband laughed and said, "Wow, how convenient, huh?" Then he repeated, "Why would I ever agree to something so messed up?" He ripped into them about being terrible parents and said he wasn't going to let their stupid plans and lies ruin his wedding, then went back to me. No one believed them. The venue had cameras, but they wouldn't show me the recording as it was only for security purposes. However, some people filmed parts of it. Watching my parents and sister get torn apart by everyone who came out to see the drama was delightful. After years of being accused of things and not being believed, seeing them get a taste of their own medicine was one of the best wedding gifts. My mother was crying, my dad kept changing from purple to white, and my sister was still on the floor crying and screaming. They kept insisting that my husband was in on it, but people kept asking why he would agree, why there was no proof, and why they wanted my sister to do this at my wedding. They had no good answers. Eventually, they were told to leave and had no choice but to do so. My dad apparently had to drag my sister up as she refused to leave the ground. Again, people said nothing to me all night. I guess they wanted to spare me, and maybe it's because I was the bride and not just a guest for once, but it did feel like everyone was making an extra effort to be nice, positive, and excited about everything. My husband says all the expensive food and drinks they were eating certainly helped, LOL. We had a blast. My husband kept up the forced angry face for only a short while before breaking out in smiles again. After that, we went to the hotel to catch some sleep before heading off on our honeymoon. Speaking of which, my parents did try to pay for our plane tickets, but we thought that was risky as they could try to cancel them or something, so we refused. Since then the three of them have tried to contact me. I've refused calls because my husband insisted on keeping a paper trail, a smart move because my sister eventually messaged me. I won't repeat what she said as it was very unhinged and didn't make much sense, but the important part was that she blamed me for her humiliation. Called my husband a two-faced snake who fooled them for months. He wants to print and hang that on our wall, LOL. And hoped, but was also certain, that I'd get cheated on by him. She even suggested he was cheating on me with her. My husband took my phone, screenshot the call logs, my sister's messages and some messages from my parents demanding I pick up the phone, and sent it all to our family group chat. He also sent screenshots of messages to him where they called him names and threatened him, but he kept up the "you're delusional, I never agreed to anything" shtick and even threatened to sue them for defamation and harassment. He wrote a message in the group chat begging my family for help as I was now being harassed by them constantly. He pleaded with them to stop my parents and sister from ruining our honeymoon after they failed to ruin our wedding. He ended with a request that they not share our locations to prevent my parents from sending my sister over and claiming he had somehow agreed to pretend to sleep with her in our honeymoon suite. LOL. My family assured him they'd handle it, and since then, we've had peace. My husband is a bit disappointed that my sister didn't disobey so he could call her out again while tearing her a new one. We'll see if the peace lasts. All in all, while I would have preferred a normal, loving family at my wedding, at least for once in my life they not only failed to ruin something meaningful to me, but I got back at them. Extra info: do I know why they treat me like this? I've been asked this question a lot, so I assume you all will wonder the same. I've pondered this all my life and still don't know. I tried asking when I was young, but they denied any difference and scolded me for being spoiled, so I stopped trying. I've considered many possibilities, but based on my observations I think it's this. I was unplanned. They took a while to have my sister, so she was not only wanted but also like a miracle child after so long. However, given our small age difference, I think they didn't expect to have another child so soon or easily and didn't use adequate protection after my sister's birth. Maybe they didn't realize my mom was pregnant until it was too late, so they were saddled with an unplanned baby while still dealing with a newborn. They're not well off, so having the extra expense likely didn't help, and they resented me. But that's just my conjecture. Regardless, I've accepted that the reason won't truly matter. What they did to me was unwarranted, no matter what. Did they really think this would work? My husband and I have a theory that they never intended to do this at all. We think my sister threw a tantrum over me getting married first when she barely gets dates, and they made my husband that outlandish proposition. They didn't want to pay for my wedding and didn't think we'd accept or that it would even look good for them to do it. By suggesting it and being refused, they could look like the good guys to my sister while having an excuse not to give me a dime. But then my husband accepted it and they couldn't backtrack without risking my sister turning on them.
My husband, a beloved high school teacher, might be secretly cheating with a former student. Seeking advice on next steps and legal action. Original post, July 8, 2024. I am freaking out right now. My partner is a high school math teacher. He has been teaching for a decade now and has generally been praised by students, parents, other teachers, and the administration for how he does his job. We have been together for 7 years and got married in 2023. I have never worried about him being interested in his students. We have even discussed teacher-student relationships, and he has always expressed disgust, saying it is an abuse of power, even if the student is an adult. He has never been called out for being inappropriate, that I know of, never engaged with students over the weekend or summer, unless it is school-related, and even then, all contact is through school email or with parents. He generally refers to his students as his kids, and actively keeps a distance from developing too close of a relationship because he is young, attractive, and other male teachers recommended he do so. Here is what happened. Around March, we were at the movie theater one evening and I noticed a group of girls staring and pointing. I notified my partner, assuming they were his students, and he told me I was right. We did not go over to say hi. We have seen his students before out and about, and he says hi on a case-by-case basis but typically does not initiate, and they did not come to us. However, I noticed the rest of the girls playfully shoving one girl with lots of whispers, and the girl was staring at my husband sheepishly. I immediately thought she probably had a crush and honestly thought nothing of it until last weekend. We were celebrating Canada Day at a BBQ with family, and my husband was pretty wasted. At one point, he went to the bathroom and did not come back for so long. I was worried he was getting sick, so I checked on him. When I knocked and said it was me, he said he was okay and would be right out but did not unlock the door. He stayed in the bathroom for another 10 minutes. This was super unusual for him, but it could have been anything. Later that night, I woke up around 3 a.m. and he was not in bed. Worried again, I got up and found him on his phone in the living room. This is also unusual. When I asked what he was doing, he was definitely surprised and hit his phone screen. He said he could not sleep and did not want to wake me up by watching videos next to me in bed. We both went back to sleep together. The next morning, he was hungover and slept in. I went through his phone. I have never had a reason not to trust him, so I have never gone through his phone before. I found nothing of interest, except for the Snapchat app, which was not logged into. He used to use Snapchat but, from what I knew, had not in years. I honestly assumed nothing from finding the app and figured I was reading too much into things. Last night, I saw a Snapchat notification pop up on his phone while we were watching TV. It was out of the corner of my eye, but the logo is too recognizable to mistake. My heart dropped because, knowing he was logged out last week, it means he is definitely using it secretly. I pretended like I did not notice, and a couple of minutes later, he got up to take a long poop. I cried while he was in the bathroom. Shortly after, I said I was going to bed early and he stayed up without me. He is on summer break. When I got up for work, he was still passed out. I went on his phone and found no Snapchat app. It was then that I knew something was shady for sure, and when I looked up Snapchat on the home screen, it was there, just hidden in a folder of apps disguised as cooking and workout apps. He had not logged out of Snapchat, and when I opened it, there was only one conversation with a real human, and it was a girl. There was no evidence of conversation between them because, for those who do not know, Snapchat deletes previous messages for good. I was ready to confront him for cheating with basically no evidence, but decided to keep snooping for something concrete. In that same disguised folder, I found that he had OnlyFans downloaded. The only content creator he was subscribed to had the same username as the woman on Snapchat, but it is his student. The one from the theater, who was blushing. I have never recognized a face so fast. I am 100% certain. We make fun of OnlyFans simps all the time, so I was already disgusted, but I actually threw up when I found this. I was scared I was going to wake him up and genuinely did not know what to do, so I put his phone back and left for work. At work, I did some sleuthing and was able to find the girl's Instagram and Twitter accounts. She is 18 and from grad photos I can tell with certainty that she attended my husband's school. The same OnlyFans link was in her Twitter bio. He has texted me normally throughout the day, and I have not responded to any but to tell him I have to go to my parents tonight, but in reality, I am still at work because I do not know what to do. The reality is that this is messed up, but she has graduated. Is this now just the same as any old affair? I don't even know if she was in any of his classes. I do not know what to think. I do not know what to do next. Lawyer. Should I ask my husband and see what he says? Should I ask her? Edit to add, does anybody know how to tell when an app was first downloaded? Too long, didn't read. My teacher husband is Snapchatting and subscribed to the OnlyFans of a student from his school who is 18. Help. Update, this blew up and there's too many comments to reply to. Update July 9th, 2024, next day. My post blew up and there were many comments asking for updates, so I want to provide one. I read every single comment, but there were too many to reply to individually. To clarify a few things, no, I did not take pictures or screenshots of the Snapchats or OnlyFans. I was so upset that I did not even think about it until afterward, and I thought there would be another chance to get them. I realize I made a mistake. Regarding some of my early comments, my brain was still reeling. I am 100% leaving my husband, to make it clear. It took me some time to come to terms with what was actually happening and the fact that I was in denial, but Reddit helped me get there, so thank you. The comments were about 50-50 split between advising me to talk to a lawyer or to my husband first. The reality is that I did not think I had anywhere else to go at the time, and I was so emotional last night and felt like I needed to know. I wanted to confront him and rip off the band-aid. He called me while I was still at work, and I ended up telling him we needed to talk. He seemed thrown off by this and canceled plans to stay in. I did not get home for almost 3 hours after that, crying and deciding what to do. Ultimately, I went home. If you're ever in the same position, do not do what I did. I wanted to follow the advice of many comments by basically saying I know about her, but I really wanted to get pictures of the evidence first, so I planned on playing it cool, saying never mind, all is okay, until we went to sleep and then sneaking back on his phone. I shouldn't have said anything on the phone, but my emotions got the better of me. But when I walked in the house, I immediately felt like he knew that I knew. He said, "What's up?" super standoffish, just seemed off, and whatever I said on the phone must have tipped him off. Either that, or he was able to tell that I was on his phone in the morning somehow, pretending to be asleep? I'm not sure. So I couldn't control myself and got super emotional and confronted him on the spot. I asked if he had OnlyFans. It was the first thing out of my mouth, and he literally said, "No, what did you want to talk about?" I told him I knew that he did and he denied. I told him I went on his phone this morning and scoffed and walked away. I followed him, crying and screaming that I knew he had OnlyFans and Snapchat. I told him that I was leaving him and finally cried out something about him cheating with his students. When I said that, he immediately turned around and asked what the fuck I was talking about. I told him that I knew about the girl, who was 18 years old, and his face genuinely turned into someone I didn't recognize. He immediately began yelling in my face that I didn't know what I was talking about, how dare I accuse him of sleeping with his students, and that I was crazy and trying to ruin his life. I was screaming back at him. I told him to open his phone and prove it, and he laughed in my face about how stupid somebody would be to do what I'm accusing him of, and basically threw his phone at my face and said, "Knock yourself out." As people can probably guess, there was nothing. He definitely knew before I got home. He was logged out of Snapchat, and when I asked him to log in and stop lying, he logged into a different account and asked me if I would drop it now. The first account had just the 18-year-old girl and a few AI accounts. This one had all his old college group chats and other people, including me. He gaslit me and swore he didn't have another account. He even suggested that I had dreamt all of this. At one point he finally admitted that he subscribed to an OF for a streamer during one of our intimacy lulls but never a student, and he swore he lied because he loved me and doesn't engage in that kind of behavior anymore. It was just hours of lies and gaslighting. He said that he knew which student I was talking about but that he's never spoken to her or taught her. He didn't recall the movie theater incident and accused me of imagining it too. He denied receiving Snapchat at all a few nights ago when I first saw it. He denied acting shady the days before. He denied everything. I was absolutely disgusted by him the whole night. As the conversation went on, he started to talk about how he's going to get us marriage counseling, that my trust issues can be worked on, and he would leave teaching if it's what it took for me to stay, but never admitted to anything with a student. Admittedly, I was starting to get a bit of a gaslight fog about the situation, believing some of what he was saying, but when he volunteered to leave teaching, I knew it was worse than I knew. Because teaching is his everything, he gave up an amazing opportunity which would have made him 3-4x the money and way more recognition to teach, and has never complained about his job a day in his life. We both know he loves his job more than he loves me. If this was truly all a misunderstanding, or if it was a one-off with a graduated non-student, I just think he would do more to protect his job and his career. He wouldn't just leave over crazy behavior from me. That immediately told me everything I needed to know, that he was panicking on the inside about me leaving and me telling people. Maybe because more happened with 18F than what I know, maybe because he's done this before, I'm not sure. But he fucked up bad. It's so late, I was so exhausted, and I feigned agreement in working through it and told him I could move past it, but I was obviously lying. I need time to get shit in order. He is sleeping in the guest room tonight. I told him I would need a lot of space, and he said he was okay with that. He left his phone in our bedroom for the night as a peace offering. I hate his fucking guts. I have so many things on my mind right now. What the fuck to do? How to get a lawyer? If I should tell my family. If I should tell the school, the fact that I have no proof but I know what I saw. The fact that I'll be 33 and divorced. Above all, the fact that my husband may have slept with this girl, that's my gut telling me, because he kept repeating that he would never sleep with his students over and over, when I was using words like cheat with, look at porn of, or sexed with. So that's the update. I was gaslit and lied to. I got no sleep last night but still went to work this morning to get away from him. He hasn't texted me or called all day. I want nothing more than to go to the school with this info. My heartbreak is gone and I'm just angry and disgusted and want to right his wrongs, but I need him to admit to it so I can know how bad it is, and I don't think he will. I was thinking of telling him that I reached out to the girl. I'm not going to, and see if that freaks him out enough to come clean, but what if she doesn't know? Maybe he's using a fake account. Or just saying I have proof, even though I don't. Anybody have any good ideas? In the meantime, I am looking for divorce lawyer ASAP. Too long, didn't read. I found proof of my husband Snapchatting and subscribing to a student's OnlyFans, but now all the evidence is gone and he has gaslit me. I have no idea where to go from here besides starting the divorce process. Relevant comments. First, get an attorney. Follow the advice of said attorney. Second, any chance of contacting this girl's parents? I'm sure they would have a better chance of finding proof and have every reason to want to do so. I thought about contacting her parents. I don't know if they would care though. She's 18, and my husband works at a school with many disadvantaged kids. He teaches advanced math and said she wasn't in his advanced classes, has never been in his classes, and she's not a smart student, so he would never have had a reason to interact with her. If that's the case, who knows what the parents would think. I'm also scared it's overreaching and that she could get in trouble for having an OnlyFans if I tell her parents. I will ask the lawyer this once I speak to one. Lastly, talk to a lawyer and get a PI involved. You will get your answers. He can't completely hide everything. OP, I am leaning towards the PI. I understand everybody's saying to divorce him and I don't need evidence. I am 100% planning to do so. I don't know how long this whole process will be, but that will happen. I will probably have to live with him in the meantime, as we both spend the majority of our income on our house. But I do not plan on being intimate with him ever again. The thing is, he is beloved in the community. I genuinely think people would believe him over me. Maybe I'm wrong, but his family would never believe me, I know. Even my own family will be shocked. I want to hurt him like he's hurt me and maybe even hurt other people. So I want proof. I think I'll look into some pleas. Are there PIs who can investigate somebody online though? Or just in real life?
I caught my boyfriend cheating just before his big night. Should I expose him or exit gracefully? What should I do? I won't go into all the gory details of our relationship. We were in love, and well, I still love him. But I found out, clearly he does not. I discovered proof that he has been cheating on me for a while. In the form of small home movies of them. I don't know the girl, and from the looks of their conversations, yep, went ahead and post-discovery snooped. She has no idea I exist. Tonight is the biggest night of my BF's life. He's receiving a state award at a big dinner with a few hundred people attending, from his mom and dad to councilmen and all of that. In fact, the only reason I discovered this transgression is because I've been putting together a little video for him to enjoy some of the key moments of his life. You know, typical sappy shit. I'm burdened with a lot of power right now, and I don't know if I have it in me to do the right thing. Or if I even know the right thing. I'm blinded with tears of rage and sadness and betrayal. But at the same time, I love him, have loved him, and do I really want to do this? The relationship is over, no doubt about it. I am not a woman who will take her man cheating on her, certainly not. That's not the issue. The issue is, there are cutest selfies of the two of them. A lot of them, only shared between the two of them. Nothing lewd, there's plenty of that on camera though. Do I sneak one in the snap reel as a way of letting him know that I know? Or do I simply confront him after his moment in the sun passes? I'm not going to pick up everything and leave without cutting contact. That's not my style and it wouldn't make me feel good, just very sad. Do I do the bitchy thing for once in my life? To anyone looking at the snap reel, it would just look like a picture of him and a friend. But to him and to me, it would be a private message, an outing. Help me Reddit. I don't know what to do this time. TLDR, found out BF was cheating on me, and have the power to let him know via slipping a photo of the two of them into the snap reel showing tonight. Should I do it or gracefully exit his life? Relevant comments. Comment 1. Nah, you know what? If there's really nothing that anyone would pick up on other than the two of you, you slip that photo into the slideshow. Make eye contact with him when the photo appears on screen. Then, when it's over, you stand up and walk out. It ain't the high road, but nobody needs to walk the high road all the time. OP, I chuckled. I think the only reason I would do this is to make eye contact with him so that he knows I know. But I'm not sure I have the guts to do that. I'm not exactly Olivia Pope. Update, found out BF was cheating on me, and had the power to let him know via slipping a photo of the two of them into the snap reel showing tonight. Should I do it, or gracefully exit his life? Well, it's been a month and a half since this all went down. I have gotten so many requests for an update and I never intended to actually give one, honestly, because I was afraid of the fallout depending on what I ended up doing. So what did I do? I did the immature vengeful thing. And I don't regret it. I took a few photos of the two of them, tasteful photos that gave off no indication other than she might be a childhood friend. I slipped them into the snap reel. And I spoke kindly of him at the podium, then after my turn was finished, I walked out. I drove home feeling calm and in control. 20 minutes later, the text started. Where did I go? What did I know? Where did I find the photos? Was there more in store for him? I texted him, I know you've been fucking her. But there are no more photos. There weren't any, and of course I left it at that. He didn't come home that night. Or the next. The next day, He called me to ask me if we could meet and talk at a public location. I agreed to meet him at Starbucks. I arrived early, waited for him. He showed up a few minutes late and took the seat across from me. He started right off with the excuses, how it just happened and he regrets it fully, she doesn't mean anything to him, and that she looked like a girl he had a crush on in high school and he was powerless against his teenage self. I didn't interrupt him, just let him have his time. When he was done and looking at me for a sign of what might happen next, all I could say was, "So where did you stay the past few nights?" "Her house." "And what did you do?" He wouldn't answer. There hadn't been any doubt in my mind. Really. I knew I was leaving him. He talked over himself, apologizing, begging for forgiveness, saying he'd change. I told him that I didn't want him to have to change himself. That if who he was, naturally, was someone who cheated on his girlfriend, then that's not someone I wanted to be with. He said that he was thinking of proposing to me, and all I could say after that was, "Good thing I found out before." Fast forward to a few weeks later. He's moved out, and I'm doing well. We have cut off contact. People ask me about him all the time, and I just let them know, he left me for a girl who looked like his high school crush. So that's the end. We are broken up. We are never, ever, ever getting back together. I don't feel any regret for how I handled it. Like one commenter said, there's no need to take the high road all the time. I added the photos to the snap reel. He saw them. We broke up and are never getting back together. I don't regret my choice, only that I wasted 3 years with an overgrown child. My boyfriend thinks I should put up with his son's mistreatment of me because he's autistic. Am I the asshole for being ready to end the relationship? Update: I took my baby and left last night. I'm hiring a lawyer to seek sole custody. Thank you for all the advice and kind words. His son is 18 but functions at a 12-13-year-old level. He says he's high functioning but I don't think he is. My boyfriend's parents raised his son and were and still are very permissive with him. He sleeps all day and gets taken out for dinner literally every day, has zero responsibilities and refuses to get a job. I know there's places that hire disabled people but he's flat out said he's not going to work. He treats his grandmother like shit and calls her horrible names such as bitch and whore. He still gets whatever he wants just handed to him. I can't stand him. My boyfriend and I have a 5-month-old son together and when he was a newborn, my PPD was so bad I was hospitalized for it. His son thinks I abandoned my son because I didn't want to take care of him and there's no convincing him otherwise. This has resulted in him screaming at me that he hates me and wants me to leave. This isn't the first time this has happened either. I've asked my boyfriend to talk to him and he says he didn't raise him and nothing would change even if he did. Now he's saying that if I can't accept his son then we can't be together. It's not about me not accepting him. I've known since the beginning of our relationship, almost 3 years, that his son is autistic and I loved him and felt maternal towards him. His own mother basically abandoned him so I felt bad for him but now I don't exactly like him since he's spoiled and entitled. I accept him but I didn't sign up to be mistreated and disrespected and be told to deal with it or leave. My boyfriend takes it like I can't accept his kids but that's not it. Honestly I'm ready to end things. The rest of his family sweeps it under the rug too. They said they're trying to teach him about PPD but it's not working so far. I know he's jealous because he sees his dad engage with our son like he didn't with him but I'm not gonna put up with him treating me like shit because he's projecting his anger at his mom and dad onto me. I feel that my boyfriend doesn't love or respect me by telling me to deal with it. I worry that he's going to do this to someone in public and they'll hurt him. I worry that he's going to physically attack me one day and I'm tired of not being able to take care of my son without him staring me down and he brings my son to everyone but me. I'm tired of everyone excusing it as his autism. Autistic people know better than to talk to people that way. I think it's because he's never been told a day in his life. I love my boyfriend but I'm not prepared to deal with being verbally abused every day. His son is on meds but they need to be adjusted. He's about to start therapy again too. Should I leave? TLDR: boyfriend and his family excuse his son's mistreatment of me as it is just his autism. Boyfriend says deal with it and accept his kids or it's over. I accepted his kids but didn't sign up to be treated like shit and told to deal with it. Ready to leave him? My ex reached out to me after a year of my husband's accident. Am I the A for lashing out at him and saying he's not my baby's father? June 25, 2024. I am 34 years old and have been with my husband for over 12 years. We had our child when I was 31 and my husband was 33. Tragically, about a year and a half ago, when our baby was around 2 years old, my husband, the love of my life, died in a terrible accident. A careless driver hit his car on a foggy, slippery road, and he died instantly in the crash. His death left me devastated. The only thing that kept me somewhat sane was our daughter. I couldn't believe I had lost him. He was my rock, my light, and I loved him dearly. In many ways, I still can't believe he's gone. I'll let my ex explain. My spouse contacted me a year or so after his injury, maybe just to vent. We split up a long time ago, even before I met my husband. Although we weren't precisely buddies, we maintained a good relationship and occasionally chatted, asking each other how they were doing. So, as a buddy, he reached out and offered to assist. Although it came as a surprise, I agreed to it since, to be honest, I didn't have many close friends save him and I desperately needed a friend. Every now and then he would stop by our house with gifts for my daughter, and we would talk over a drink or some tea. It wasn't close. I told him that I wasn't ready for any new connections after losing my spouse, and over the years, he had a number of casual encounters. I suppose I'm not quite ready yet. He was quite kind to my kid, so I didn't see anything wrong with them bonding. He came over once or twice a month. However, my child then began phoning my former father. It really irritated me, but since she's still a toddler, how was I meant to tell her to stop? I doubt she comprehended when I tried to gently explain to her that my ex isn't my father. So when my ex came over, I just started sending her to my mom or my husband's parents. To be honest, I'm sure our child won't remember her father. All she will have of him are pictures. And I don't want her to see another man as her replacement. Thus, everything returned to normal. When I informed my ex that my daughter wasn't home, I could see that he was angry. I didn't give it much thought though. And that's when I lost it the last time. I may have been the asshole in that situation because I yelled at my ex in the end when I should have handled it better. My mother sent my daughter home early from his visit since she was acting quite unhappy and wanted to go home after we played some video games and had a few beers. He got up and said, "This is my baby, I've missed you," to my daughter. And extended a hug toward her. That's where I snapped at him. I told him angrily that he is in fact not her father, and that she is my and my husband's baby and will never be his baby no matter how much he wants it. And if he wants to have a child, he still has plenty of chances with his girlfriend. He told me I was a real for saying such cruel things and left. My mother told me that I was kind of an asshole too and I acted like a child. So am I. Relevant comments. Commenter, no assholes here. I think you took some unresolved trauma out on him, and also that him calling your kid his baby was pretty clueless since he presumably will not be her father. He's more of an uncle, if we want to use family terms at all. I think you should apologize even though he was also wrong, assuming you want to be friends and have him in your kid's life. Hopefully he will understand that it is a sore subject for you right now and parts of it will obviously be a sore subject forever. OP. Thank you. I think you're right. I still take everything concerning my husband to heart and my ex's words hit very close to home. I don't think I was wrong in what I said to him, but I was wrong in the way I said it. After thinking about it for some time, I think I do want him in my and my daughter's life. He is a very good friend and very supportive, especially in my time of need, so I shouldn't have lashed out at him. I think I'll try calling him to apologize and communicate my issues clearly. Maybe he didn't even mean anything by his words and just loves my baby and expressed it a bit clumsily. But I admit his words really triggered me at that moment. Commenter, nah. You are still heavily grieving the loss of your husband. You should in my opinion apologize to him and explain your thoughts. He can accept the apology or not. If you're not currently in therapy you should really consider it. I have a friend whose son's dad passed away when he was 3. Same thing. Only pictures and basically no memories. OP, thank you for your advice. I believe you're right. I should apologize and clearly explain my feelings to him. I didn't express my concerns earlier, and then I exploded unnecessarily. I need to set some clear boundaries with him and explain that I'm still hurting and don't want him to call my daughter his baby in any way. If he's okay with it, that'll be great. If not, then I won't have a choice but to stop speaking to him for my own sake. I'm in therapy right now, and while it's a lengthy process, it's good. And my deepest condolences for your friend's son. Commenter. Since you have a baby, you will need to enact clear boundaries with him. It's possible that given you two's romantic history, he doesn't realize he's crossing lines. But once you let these boundaries be known, it's up to him to follow them and you to enforce them. Don't let him bully you. You're the mom and dad to your baby. OP, you are right. My first priority is my baby's well-being. Although some of my relatives say a child needs a father figure, I think that's nonsense. If I meet a nice man who is at least as great as my husband, then maybe. But it should be on my terms and not forced onto me and my baby. Commenter. If he only came back into your life because of the baby, I think there is something going on here. There are tons of bad people out there who insinuate themselves into single moms' lives to get access to the kids. Protect your daughter. You don't need your ex. You dumped him for a reason already. OP, I'm not really sure if he has some ulterior motive about my baby. Maybe he's too projecting some unresolved issues, maybe not. He's generally a good person and a good friend. But you're right, he was a terrible boyfriend. We were very young and our relationship was clearly toxic. However, we later talked and decided that we are much better as friends than as lovers. However, after writing this and giving it some thought, I realized that I should first apologize for yelling, and then, second, create some firm boundaries between him and my child. He has the right to reject that, but in that case, we will not communicate. Commenter. Not the A, and this seems to be some ploy on his part to get back with you and has extended to creating a relationship with your daughter. OP. I don't think he wants to get back with me, though I'm not completely sure. We broke up for a reason. We were young and foolish, and our relationship was entirely toxic. He's a good friend though. Sometime after the breakup, which was surprisingly calm, we talked and decided to stay in touch. We weren't close friends, but we were friendly. He was very supportive after my husband's death and helped me a lot. I won't deny there's a bit of nostalgia about the times we were together, but it's more of a running joke now. We can say, "Do you remember when we were together? So and so happened," and we laugh. I definitely do not want him as a partner. He was a terrible boyfriend. And judging by his behavior with his numerous girlfriends, that hasn't changed. He initially didn't express any interest in having children, but maybe he's projecting some of his own issues onto my daughter. Commenter. This whole situation is bizarre to me. I don't understand why you'd allow your ex this much access to your kid. I understand needing the support, but the situation is suspicious as fuck to me. In general, not the A. OP, thank you for your input. You're right, I believe I was wrong for introducing them at all. I was a wreck and needed support, yes, but my priority should be my child. First year after my husband died, a lot of people came over to offer condolences and some help, my and my husband's family. My daughter was always by my side. She once called my husband's brother Papa, but they look so much alike that it is understandable. And I kinda miss the fact that my ex's visits and gifts can be a problem. I was too late to understand that I need to set clear boundaries, and it is inappropriate for them to bond if I do not want any relationship besides friendship with my ex. On the term Papa, thank you for your input. I didn't mention it in my post, but we are European and the term Papa is actually more common here. Maybe it wasn't even his intention and he did it subconsciously. I was in the wrong to scream and yell, but we definitely need to set some clear boundaries if this friendship is gonna last. OP is voted not the A by top comment, but comments are heavily mixed with no assholes here. Update, same post, June 27, 2024, 2 days later. First, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who offered condolences, advice and criticisms. I appreciate it very much. I believe some context and explanation are necessary. My husband and I had a very close friend group, and we usually hung out at our place because we have a sort of playroom with a PS5, a good PC, VR, board games, and a D&D table. We are big fans of gaming in many forms. Sadly, our friends moved to different countries over the years one by one, and after my husband died I was left with only one friend from the group nearby. But she's a young mother too and we can't hang out like before. We still speak but it's not been the same. So I wanted some familiarity when my ex appeared. I was vulnerable and allowed things to escalate too much. I desperately wanted to have a friend who shares similar interests with me and my husband. So I was blind to some red flags and my own wrong choices. Also, I never left my ex alone with my daughter for more than a couple of minutes. I was wrong to introduce them in the first place. Now to the update itself. Yesterday evening my ex came by unannounced and uninvited. I was a little worried, but thankfully my husband's brother and his wife were at our house with their kids on a playdate. So I asked them to watch over the kids for some time and went to talk with my ex outside. He was drunk. A lot. He started talking and he said a lot. In a nutshell, he said that he will always care about me, that he suppressed some feelings for all these 15 years and he just realized that he was a fool to let me go. I admit I do care about him too, but not even remotely in a way I care about my husband. So I was a fool to hope we can be friends and have a civil relationship without any implications. Our conversation became heated and we argued, with many accusations being thrown around. My brother-in-law came out of the house, bringing our large, overprotective dog with him. So I quickly apologized to my ex for leading him on and told him to move on and asked him to leave and never return. I was a bit worried that things could get violent, but he left without any protest. He later posted long and vague posts about being hurt and that love is shit, and he is better off alone, and tagged me and several of his other exes. Not sure how his girlfriend may react to that, but it doesn't really matter anymore. I blocked him everywhere and hoped he wouldn't appear in our lives anymore. Also, I will update my security system as soon as possible just in case. Spot on comments. Commenter. I watched a TikTok this morning by a woman who took something for relief after several days of constipation. Then she went commando in a sundress to Walmart, where she trusted what felt like gas only to shit on the floor. And somehow that dude vague booking his feelings and tagging his exes is still the most embarrassing experience relayed to me today. Replier, I don't believe that lady. I suspect she went to that Walmart commando just to shit on the floor to try to get away with it. I had a friend that worked at both Walmart and Target. The amount of people that decide to take a dump in areas like the fitting room will blow your mind. Like to the point where if you were in a fitting room, there is a good chance that a minimum of 5 different people have taken a shit in that fitting room at 5 different times. Commenter. I had forgotten about this until I read your comment, but when I was a kid, my great aunt was telling us about going to Walmart once and discovering that someone had taken a shit in one of the purses there. My mom also almost stepped on a human turd on the floor once at a different Walmart in the entry area. What is up with people pooping everywhere at Walmart? I hate that place. Commenter, my ex-coworker told me a story about a woman who was bouncing in a shoe aisle one time. My coworker was called to the front of the store and forgot about her. Coworker was later going around the department to straighten up and went into the fitting room where she found a lone child's rain boot. She went to pick it up and discovered pee in it. She went up front and they checked the cameras. That bitch, instead of going up front to the restrooms, waited till she was gone, grabbed the boot off of the shelf, jumped into the nearby fitting room and did her business. People are nasty. Commenter. I used to work in a retail shop, and when I moved to a new city I started working at the local branch there. At the first branch, such incidents were never a problem. In 2 years, the only issue we had was a toddler having a spectacular accident. Without going into too much detail, the child was wearing shorts and tried to run away afterward, spreading the mess everywhere. The mother apologized profusely, helped clean up, and even called customer service to thank us for our kindness. However, at the second store, people would have inappropriate bathroom incidents at least once a week. I could never figure out why there was such a difference. Both stores were part of the same chain, located in very similar cities and neighborhoods in terms of socioeconomic status, with comparable public toilet availability nearby. The customer bases seemed superficially similar. It made no sense to me. After being ***ually abused by my stepfather, I lived with my dad. Recently, I discovered that he chose me over my former stepmother and half-sister. I was sexually abused between the ages 9, 13 by my stepfather. Both he and my mom will be behind bars for many years to come. When I was sent to live with my dad, I was broken. I barely spoke, didn't eat much if at all. I wasn't mad or angry. I was null of any kind of emotion. Basically, I was alive but wasn't living. I kept my interactions with everyone to the bare minimum. I was polite but didn't go out of my way to make conversation with anyone. I was more social with my dad but I kept it to a bare minimum. I had nothing left to say to anyone. It took me 2 years for me to be able to allow my dad to show any form of parental affection towards me. That's how withdrawn I had become. Dad was my rock throughout the whole thing. When I experienced night terrors, I would wake up and either find my dad holding my hand or him holding me. He drove me to all of my therapist appointments. He made sure I was eating properly. There were days, I would break down for no reason and he would just hold me and tell me that everything will be okay. He literally went above and beyond for me. I hated the city that we were living in. Because I had so many bad experiences there, it made living there miserable. I was so passive, it was scary. My therapist had told my dad that I was stuck in the victim cycle. I didn't know how to get out. Because of this, I was bullied quite a bit. By the time I was 15, I had been to 3 different schools. It got to the point where my dad pulled me out of public school and enrolled me into online classes. I was always very studious and managed to maintain a 94% average overall, but my life lacked any sort of direction. Nothing would motivate me. Looking back, Dad did spoil me, but at the time I wasn't aware of it. I was so in my own body that I barely acknowledged my surroundings. If I asked my dad for a new bedspread, I would get me a new one plus new furniture. My phone of 5 years broke and Dad got a new one plus a laptop. I was grateful and thanked him. I did share with my half-sister and stepsister at the time. Again, I was being polite. I didn't have any form of relationship with my former stepmother, stepsister, or half-sister. I barely knew what it was like being a son at the time, let alone being a brother. By the time I was 16, Dad had approached me and told me that he and he are moving out. I didn't question it. He had asked me to pack my things and we moved into a rental. I didn't think it was any of my business, so I didn't press the issue. A year later, Dad had divorced my stepmother. One of Dad's business acquaintances offered him a partnership in Boston and he took it. We moved and I felt I was ready to start my senior year of high school in a public school. That year was probably the best year of my life. I was coming out of my shell. There was no fear of being judged or being the odd man out. It was as if I was like everyone else. I felt normal. I became more social, made a lot of friends, got into sports, clubs, and went out more. Us moving probably saved my life. Because we had moved 9 hours away from my half-sister, she would only come visit us on long weekends, a month during summer break. There was always a form of tension between my dad and half-sister. You could just sense it. It got to the point where as she got older, she stopped coming entirely. Me and Dad have always been close. When I had graduated from high school and gave my valedictorian speech, I could see my dad crying in the crowd. I lived with my dad while I attended college. I still do for the time being. Ever since I was a child, I always wanted to be a doctor. Well, I just finished my first year of medical school. Honestly, I feel like a normal young adult in society. I have a job, friends, a boyfriend whom I've been with for 4 years. I'm thriving in all aspects of my life. Recently, I got a FB message from my half-sister. She was apologizing a lot, and I had no clue what she was talking about. Turns out, the reason why Dad and I moved out from my stepmother's home was because my half-sister told my stepmother that I was watching her change. Yes, she told her mom that I was watching her change. At the time, I was traumatized of sex. Heck, I was terrified of any form of intimacy. The kid was envious of what Dad was doing for me. She was so envious that she tried to move me out. Well, I guess her mom and my dad got into a big fight and I'm only going to assume that she did not want me in the house. Because we moved out. I think it's safe to assume my dad didn't believe it. How can someone be so cruel? What did I ever do to her? Those were the questions that were racing through my head. I didn't even respond. More importantly, Dad never let this get back to me. Chances are if I had heard about this when I was 16, that would have been the final nail in the coffin. It also explains the tension between my dad and half-sister. This is a lot to take in and I have a newfound respect and love for my dad. He gave up this marriage for me so I could live a normal life. Dad is away on a business trip and won't be back for a few more days. I'm missing him a lot lately. Should I bring it up to him when he returns? Also, would it be fair for me to just cut my half-sister out of my life entirely? At the same time, it's sad that their relationship is almost non-existent and I almost want to help. Teal.er. Dad chose me over my stepmother and half-sister after my half-sister told a very dangerous lie that could have potentially ruined my life. Dad kept it from me for 6 years. Should I bring up with him? Edit. I wasn't expecting such a huge response. I just wanted to say thank you for all the feedback. It will take some time, but I will read all of them or as much as I can. As I was going through the comments, I found a number of people questioning the integrity of this. This is a part of my life. I don't normally like to talk about this. Aside from myself, my dad and close friends, not many people know about this. The fact that people are saying that it's fake. I don't know what to say. It's not my place to try and convince anyone. Believe me, there are times I wish could convince myself it's not real, but that's not possible. When I wrote this, I wasn't thinking about syntax. It was more just getting this out. People question its integrity based on grammatical errors. Forgive me, but I wasn't in the mindset to reread and go over it. As for how I became valedictorian, and a number of people were very curious, I did respond to it in the comments, but I'll post it here too. It was very unorthodox how I became valedictorian after attending a real HS for only a year. My overall average was the highest in my graduating class, but because I was in online classes for my previous years, I wasn't eligible at the time. I met with the grade coordinator and inquired about my chances, and her response was the same. I broke down in front of the coordinator and I told her the truth. Being named valedictorian was something I always wanted. To be that would have been my first accomplishment that I would have achieved based on my own merit. Yes, there is also the likelihood of getting a free ride to colleges. It wasn't trying to be valedictorian for financial reasons. Money wasn't a problem. Dad did make a lot. It was more this being my first official achievement. This would have helped me self-worth as well. The girl who was originally going to be valedictorian did meet with me and I told her the truth. She actually talked to the administration to let me valedictorian instead. It's something I'll forever be grateful for. That's actually how me and her became friends. Not many people would do that, and in HS. I'll be posting again, I just need a few days. Despite being the most experienced, I was overlooked for marketing team lead, and they hired an external candidate, hurting my motivation and self-esteem. Hi everyone. It's been a few months now since this happened, but I can't get past this, and I guess I just want to get this off my chest in hopes that it'll help me get over it. Here we go. I've been working at the same company for over 6 years. The company is medium-sized, I would say, and at the time I was hired we didn't have a marketing department. With time the company grew, and after 1 year of working there, they offered to kickstart the marketing department. I accepted. For 2 years, I was the only person in the marketing department. I did everything all by myself. I knew how everything worked. I kept my numbers and quality high, and my manager even asked my boss to give me a bonus for my hard work. As the company grew, the work became too much for just one person, so they gave me a team. We were now 4 in total. I trained and pretty much led the team, but the thing is, my title never went past marketing agent. I thought that with all the things I'm doing, I'd at least get marketing manager by now. I expressed this to my manager, who said that they'll see what can be done. Months passed, my title remained the same, but then in a meeting with my manager one day, they told me that our boss is thinking that there should be a marketing team lead on the team. They said that they think it's going to be me as I started off the department, trained everyone, have the most knowledge, and have been in the company for 6 years now. Obviously, I got excited hearing that, and I patiently waited for the boss to finally drop the news to me. The news ended up being that they were looking for a marketing team lead. And they decided to hire externally. I can't even put into words the way I felt. Even now, I still feel like I've been punched in the gut. It feels so unfair and humiliating. I was the first person in the marketing department. I have the most experience. Why would you hire someone with 0 experience instead? I asked my manager why I wasn't considered for it, and their response was basically just, "Boss just couldn't see you being a team lead." Hearing that seriously killed my self-esteem and made me feel even more humiliated. They eventually hired the person to take on the team lead role. And what made me want to slam my head against the wall is that they made me train them on everything I knew. Listen, the new team lead is a nice person and I really don't want to hate them because it's not their fault, but my bitterness is so strong, I just don't even want to interact with them unless I need help. So now, I'm stuck being marketing agent forever, I guess. But what really drove me to write this on Reddit is the new team member. One person on the team left and was replaced with someone else, who just started last month. The team lead is on vacation. So I was the one asked to train the new hire. As I was training them, we talked and I told them a little about myself, about how I started the department and everything. And then they said, "So all that just to not be team lead?" And that honestly just pissed me off. I don't know if it's their wording, their tone or the look of pity on their face that got to me, but I just shut down. I laughed it off, finished up with training and just barely worked the whole day. And the day after that. Even now I feel like my numbers are lower than usual, my quality definitely dropped, but I just can't care anymore. I know I could just quit, but this company's benefits are amazing. And I've made so many friends here that would make leaving so hard. Traveling for work every few months allowed me to see different cities and take in new experiences, but I just can't get past this, and I don't know if I ever will. I might just go through the days until I really just can't do it anymore. If you've read up until this point, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it and I really hope this situation never happens to you. Edit. Hi again, everyone. I just want to thank you all for your advice. You've all been very helpful and you've all given me the confidence to send my resume to other companies for a team lead or manager position. I'll be sending my resume to more as they pop up. The market is terrible right now, but I am pretty confident. Now I just have to act like normal in this current position until I hear from one of them. Wish me luck. For those wondering how I trained the new team lead, I did not teach them everything I knew. Hell no. I taught them enough to do their job, but when it comes to deeper knowledge, I held back. I personally just thought it was the smartest decision for me, as teaching them all I knew wouldn't have benefited me at all. It's up to my company to teach them everything else, not keep relying on me. When I was asked to train the new hire, I did mention that I shouldn't train them if we have a team lead. But boss hit back saying that I would be responsible if the team fell behind if we waited until the team lead got back from vacation. I didn't want to cause stress for the rest of the team and myself, so I, stupidly, complied. I did consider threatening to leave if I didn't get the team lead role, but I held back because I was afraid of the response, lol. I was afraid they would have just let me go and I'd be left unemployed without a backup job, especially considering the job market right now. But I guess my pride also played a part in it. I really wanted to be given the team lead role because they believed in me, wanted to give it to me, not because I threatened them. I also do quite like my job, so I thought I could suck it up, but it's really not worth the mental suffering. Huge thanks again for reading my ramblings. Have a great one, guys. Update: so, I got a job as marketing team lead. Just finished week 3. The market is rough right now, but I'm glad I didn't give up and just kept applying. My new job's a little challenging, but my mental health is in a better place now knowing I could finally, fully let go of that grudge. If you're in a similar situation, don't lose hope. When I gave in my notice, I would pay just to see the look on my boss's face again when I told them I was leaving for a marketing team lead job. They tried to match the salary match, but I declined. They asked what they could do to keep me, but I kept it polite and just said that it was time for me to experience more in a different role now. I could tell they were really pissed, but I couldn't care less, lol. And then apparently they talked smack about me to the manager, that I was betraying them and all that BS. It's so embarrassing, LMAO. Of course, before I left, I asked my manager what I needed to improve on to be a better team lead so I can do even better in my new role. I was told things like, be a little more strict, have more confidence, and other things I made sure to write down to work on. And I know it's been months, but I still wanted to ask again why I was passed up the promotion at this company. So apparently it's because they made it so that the team lead did more admin work. More team reports, team evaluations, team decisions and coming up with new procedures, and less marketing. Apparently, since I'm the most senior with consistent results, they didn't want to lose that by making me team lead. So they figured keeping me as a marketing agent was the smartest move for the company. I fully understand their decision, but screw that, LMAO. I feel like I'm actually doing what a team lead should be doing in my new company, and that's all I really wanted. It just feels like they're still trying to figure out what a team lead should do, and I'm not willing to stick around for that again. Thank you again everyone for encouraging me to look for another job. I got way too comfortable in my last job that I allowed them to walk all over me. You aren't handcuffed to a certain company forever. It's okay to leave when you feel there's no more growth for you. Have a great one, everyone.
Fiance's family mocked me behind my back. Now I'm considering calling off the wedding. Need advice on how to handle the situation. Original post, June 29, 2024. 23 years old. Am engaged to John, 24 years old. We have been together for 5 years. We want to get married in July 2025. I always thought that his family liked me because we get along well. He has 2 older brothers, 26 years old, 29 years old, both married. Honestly, I was very excited to have them all as my in-laws. They were always kind to me. Some kind of important information. About a year ago when I was scrolling on Instagram, I saw a profile that was kind of cringy but in a cute way. It was an older woman's profile who shared inspirational quotes. I remember one particular post and it was something along the lines of, only stupid people pretend to know everything. Don't pretend, just ask. Honestly, this quote changed me in a lot of ways. Before that, I was always worried that I might embarrass myself if I didn't know something, and after reading that quote I realized that if I always pretend that I know everything, then I'll miss out on actually getting to learn about things. So I decided to change my habits and start admitting that sometimes I genuinely don't know. Someone is talking about the war in Kosovo. Okay, sure, but first let me ask some questions so I can really understand what we're talking about. And I ask a lot of questions sometimes. I sometimes even open the Notes app and write in some questions that I later want to find answers to. These are my latest. 1. How does time work in the black hole? 2. Why do some snails have shells and others don't? 3. What food is okay for ducks? 4. How does the light bulb work, the old ones with gas inside them? 5. Does everyone see colors the same? And how can we know that? Sorry for the long introduction, but it was kind of necessary for understanding what kind of person I am. I know that sometimes I might come across as annoying. Now on to the problem. His parents hosted a small barbecue last weekend only for the family. So it was the mom, 54 years old, dad, 59 years old, brothers, 26 years old, 29 years old, and their wives, 27 years old, 27 years old. I was the last person who showed up because I had to work late. I entered the house, and when I was walking towards the back of the house into the backyard, I heard John's mom talking about me. To be honest, she wasn't talking about me, more like mocking me. I heard her say in a high-pitched voice, "How does the sun work? Where should I put the fork? Why does nobody like me? How do I wipe my ass?" I just stood there. I had this sinking feeling. I couldn't move, so I just stood there. And I heard them all laughing. One of the wives said, I actually don't mind her always asking questions. I think it's cute, and it made me feel hopeful that they would say something like, "Yeah, sure, we're just playing. We love that." But none of them did. Instead, the mom replied, "It's not cute, she's just stupid." After that, they laughed again. I heard John laughing. My heart kind of broke at that moment because he didn't even say one positive thing. He didn't defend me, he just left. I quietly turned around and left the house. I texted John that I got sick and had to stay home. Now I'm wondering how I should approach this situation. We live together and I sleep in the guest bedroom for now, and I use the excuse that I don't want him to get sick from being around me. I can't ignore him forever, and I can't pretend to be sick anymore because it's been too long. I'm not sure how I should proceed. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. I'm considering talking to them about this, but I'm also worried that they won't be honest with me. I can't marry him if he really thinks I'm stupid. But I also can't marry into a family who thinks so little of me. But maybe it was a joke and I shouldn't take it so seriously. I'm so torn apart, and every day I convince myself a bit more that it's okay and sometimes we should all laugh about ourselves. Now I feel like I'm just going crazy. I would really appreciate some advice. Too long. Didn't read, overheard future mother-in-law calling me stupid and my fiancé laughed. Considering leaving him. I'm wondering if it might be just a joke and maybe a misunderstanding. Need advice on how to navigate the situation. Edit. There are many comments saying that they cannot stand people like me. I agree that sometimes I can be a bit too much with the questions, but with that being said, I still think I'm within reason. I don't do it around people I just met. I rarely do it at parties or other gatherings. I usually do it with people who are close to me, who I think wouldn't judge me, or with people who specifically have knowledge about something and are willing to share it. If I'm a part of a conversation, I'm not rude and I'm not interrupting. I usually just ask one or two questions. If a discussion is about climate change, I'm not asking about monkeys, if you know what I'm saying. I'm also not a complete dumbass. I don't ask questions that generally would be considered dumb to other people. Those I just write in the notes and check answers later on the internet. I'm capable of reading, so I make good use of it. But after all, I still do ask questions a lot. Highlight comment and some replies. Commenter: they were laughing at you behind your back. If he says anything along the lines of, "That is how they are, get over it, it is not a big deal, you are too sensitive," anything that excuses their behavior, then he is really asking you to accept it. He is asking you to give your permission for it to continue, and your silence is your permission for it to continue. If they can't say it to your face, that tells you a world of information about the kind of people they are. If you want to see how things really are, confront them about this and see what happens. Their reactions will tell you everything you need to know about all of them and will be helpful in making such a big decision. It will show you how they deal with conflict, which will be a good indication of what you will be getting yourself into should you marry this guy. They will be a part of your life for as long as they are alive. You need to know if you can tolerate being a part of his family. Replier 1, OP: if he says they were just kidding, respond with, "Well, I'm not spending the rest of my life being the butt of the joke," and give him the ring back. This isn't going to get better if he does anything other than immediately apologize for everything, including not defending you. Replier 2, this is brutally sad to discover now, but it is crucial to either set boundaries or leave the relationship. You deserve respect and kindness from your in-laws, and it is 100% non-negotiable from your spouse. For the entire side of the family to be involved in that nastiness is shocking. It's really disturbing and gross that they would act like that. Replier 3, this isn't about boundaries. His entire family thinks of her as stupid. Her confronting him and them won't change that. Her husband also thinks it's okay to mock her. That's just terrible. They should be embarrassed. To be such nasty people. It is disturbing and gross. She should have nothing to do with any of them. OP: this isn't something you can fix. You just learned that they are horrible people. That's not family. And never will be, no matter what you do. Replier 4, exactly. They're actively making fun of her. She's been in their lives for 5 years and is about to officially marry. To hear them talk about someone they're supposed to love like that, honestly really upsets me. Her fiancé not only doesn't defend her, but he joins in on the laughing. So he agrees with what his mother is saying to some degree. I don't think I could marry someone who felt comfortable letting someone put me down like that. Replier 5. OP, your fiancé doesn't respect you. In fact, the only person who does it all is the one who said your asking questions is cute. I'm so sorry they're so toxic, and you only found out after hearing them mock you when they didn't realize you were there and could hear them. I wish I had known how toxic my wife's family is before we married. Toxic in-laws are the worst. Update post, July 2nd, 2024, 3 days later. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to the people who reached out to answer my questions about black holes, snails, ducks, light bulbs, and other topics. I would love to have you as my friends. For those who said I should just shut up, I don't really care if you find me annoying or hard to be around. I'm okay with that. I don't exist to please everyone. I'm just here for a good time, to have my own interests and to learn. I didn't expect my post to gain so much attention, but I'm so grateful for the advice. Most of you told me to break up with him and at the very least confront him, so that's what I decided to do. You gave me a push and confidence to do it. Before I did that, I texted the wife of John's brother, the one who said she liked me asking questions. I asked if we could meet up for coffee. She said sure. We met and I didn't see the point in pretending to her that I didn't hear their conversation. So after some small talk, I just said, I heard you all talking about me during the barbecue. She immediately got sad and said she felt embarrassed. She explained that it wasn't a joke, wasn't out of context, that it was just mean and hurtful. She said she's sorry for not defending me more, but I said that it's okay and I understand. I told her that I don't blame her for anything, and just wanted to make sure that I understood the situation and see it for what it really was. And it really was laughing at me behind my back. Just bullying. At this point I just had to confront John. In my last post, so many comments were saying that he would probably try gaslighting me. And you were right. We were having dinner together for the first time since the barbecue happened because before I tried my best to avoid him. Yes, I know, not very mature of me, but other than you guys, I don't really have a strong support system. My family and best friends are hundreds of kilometers away. I only have 2 good friends here. I was so stressed I thought I was going to pass out. My legs were shaking and I was terrified because I knew deep down that this is the moment when my 5-year relationship goes down the drain. I looked him in the eyes and asked, "How does the sun work?" He looked confused, so I followed with, "Where should I put my fork? Why does nobody like me?" At this point, realization hit him, and he started nervously laughing. I said I was there and I heard them. After the initial shock passed, he got mad. He said it's rude to eavesdrop. I said it's rude to bully people. He tried telling me that it was just a joke, that I shouldn't be so uptight, that it really was funny. I said that I didn't find it funny and went to the guest room to calm down. He started panicking. He was asking me to please talk to him. He was much more apologetic and said that he would be 100% honest with me. I asked if his mother made similar comments before the barbecue. He said yes. I asked him if he ever defended me. He said he tries to. I don't know if I believe him. He told me he loves me and respects me. I don't know if I believe it either. I said that I love him too, but I need a break. He's all I've ever known. He was my first and only partner. I have no outside perspective of this. I have no experience. I need a moment to think. I will be going to my friend's house for a while to think everything through. The apartment has his name on the lease anyway. After I gathered some of my things and left, he kept texting me nonstop. He tried calling, but I didn't respond. I was very hurt because he tried to belittle my feelings and only later, when he realized that I might break up with him, started apologizing. The next day I decided to give him another chance to explain himself and I came back to the apartment. He seemed very sad and tired. He said that he told his mother that I overheard them. I said I don't care. It's his time to step up and show me that he cares. I'm not interested in an apology from his mother. I'm already done with her. I can't put up with this behavior and mocking me like we're in primary school. I saw a comment saying that probably her ego is hurting. I think it's true. She never got the chance or never had the desire to have an education. She is a very good homemaker, but outside of that, she doesn't have many interests of her own. If I'm asking her about making tomato soup, she will be talking for 30 minutes lecturing me about adding enough sugar, but not too much. She will lecture anyone who is willing to listen. but anytime someone is talking about something she's not familiar with, she gets defensive and tries to imply that nobody cares about that, and if it's not relevant to her, it shouldn't be discussed. Once again, he tried telling me that I should relax because it was only a joke, and at this point, I had enough. I took off my ring and told him that his behavior is a joke and I can't be the punchline. I told him that I wish him and his family the best and to look in the mirror to check if they really are as superior as they think they are. I said I'm going to be back with my friend soon to pick up the rest of my stuff and to not contact me again unless it's about moving my things out. And that's it, I'm done. Thank you all for the advice. Without you, I wouldn't have the confidence to leave this man. I know I deserve better. I can't be with someone who can't stand up for me, and I wouldn't be able to feel comfortable around his family, so I'm done with the relationship. I hope they will treat his next girlfriend better. Thank you again, Reddit, for the advice. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Keep on being curious. Not judgmental. OP. Same, I absolutely love that show. I watched it with my ex and it's funny that he didn't like Ted and thought that his character was not relatable and silly. To be honest, we all should have Ted's strength and positivity sometimes. Commenter 2. OP. Your ex-mother-in-law can still go and get an education. Many have and there is still time. That's no excuse for what she did, and her saying that and acting like that shows how uneducated she is. OP. I think so too. I believe it's never too late to start learning something new and continue education. In my university, there was an old lady in her 70s who recently graduated, and everyone was just so proud of her. In my country, university is free, so the barrier to entry isn't as bad as in the US, for example. Editor's note, thanks to the person who found this comment with answers to many of OP's questions. Struggling with face blindness, I broke up with my boyfriend who constantly tested me. He wants closure, but I fear more of his cruel pranks. Editor's note, prosopagnosia, also known as face blindness, is a neurological disorder that makes it difficult to recognize faces and facial expressions. Original post April 4, 2024. Hi everyone, I apologize for posting this, and if it's not appropriate, I can delete it. I have been with my boyfriend for almost a year now. I love him dearly, and I believe he loves me too, but there is one issue causing a lot of problems in our relationship. I suffer from prosopagnosia, also known as face blindness, which makes it really difficult for me to recognize people's faces. I usually rely on other characteristics to identify people, such as hairstyle, facial hair, marks, skin color, accessories, etc. However, it is still very challenging. This condition has caused me severe anxiety and other mental health struggles. I am fortunate to have wonderful people around me who are aware of my condition and try to help. They introduce themselves when we start talking, wear something I associate with them, or find other ways to make it easier for me. Usually, my boyfriend does this too, but sometimes he likes to test me, and it is incredibly stressful. Once he shaved off his beard and a few times he wore a completely different style of clothing or changed his hairstyle, all without warning me. During these moments, he won't tell me who he is or even say someone else's name, just to see if I will figure out it's him. He makes jokes about switching with one of his friends to see if I will stay loyal. Although I usually recognize him eventually, it causes me a lot of anxiety. We have had major arguments about this. He insists he is allowed to change his appearance. I'm not a cartoon character, while I ask him to warn me beforehand. Don't get me wrong, he cares about me, but I don't think he fully understands how stressful it is. How can I make it clear to him? We have a lot of great times together. This is just a bump in the road. Update. It's hard to believe I made this post 19 hours ago and now I am in the middle of breaking up with him. I am very tired, so I will keep this brief. I went to talk to him, showed him this post, and told him he cannot do this anymore. The conversation was intense. First, he was angry I made this post, then he was angry I was taking it all so seriously. There were lots of apologies and so on. He again said he was just trying to make a tough situation more lighthearted and I said it's too much. He said I can't take a joke and I need to let him be himself. He argued that he always tells me when he's been joking and that if he really wanted to hurt me, he would just do things without telling me, so him telling me proves he cares. That comment made me very uncomfortable. At one point, he said he just wanted to test if my condition was real, because he thought I could be using it as an excuse for something. I left after that because we were just going in circles. There was a lot of him making an issue out of one small thing. I am exhausted. He is still blowing up my phone with love and apologies, but you all made me realize a lot. Thank you, really. I am trying to stay rational about it, but it's hard because I do care about him a lot. I am going to get a few hours of sleep. Thank you again. Relevant comments. Comment 1. He is messing with your safety. Does he not realize that? OP, I don't think he realizes how confusing it all is. There was a moment when he did the opposite, acting all weirded out when I thanked him for a nice date, saying it wasn't him. Even though I knew it was, I still started to doubt myself. He did say it was a joke soon after, but it caused such a panic. He hasn't done it again, but it took me a long time to feel comfortable again. Comment 2. Making someone feel unsafe is not a joke. Gaslighting someone you care about is not a joke. Comment 3. Holy smokes, that's terrifying. Not recognizing a familiar face with a major change like that is like nightmare fuel. The fact that your boyfriend does it to you multiple times on purpose is scary. I don't know if there is a way you can explain it to him if he doesn't get it. It seems he enjoys your panic, which is not a good thing in a partner. If this was my partner, I would get a tattoo or something. And I don't have any. OP, my dad actually got a tattoo on his arm for me, which is a great comfort. I hadn't realized how messed up everything is until reading all these replies. Comment 4. Your boyfriend is basically abusing you in emotional situations. He thinks it's hilarious that you struggle and get severe anxiety, which isn't normal, nor does it mean he cares about you. This is a huge red flag. OP. Abuse is a really big word, but I do agree it's not okay. I'm seeing him soon, so we'll see how it goes. Update, April 8, 2024. Hi y'all, I hope it's okay if I post a little update. Things went completely crazy over the past few days, and I wanted to share what happened. First, I want to express my gratitude to all of you. I wasn't fully aware of the real implications of my boyfriend's pranks and what they said about him and our relationship until I read your comments. Your insights opened my eyes to how problematic his behavior was. The same evening I made my initial post, I went to talk to him, intending to make it clear that he couldn't continue with his pranks. The conversation escalated quickly. We talked for hours into the night and exchanged messages every day since. He was furious about the Reddit post I made, angry at you guys, and upset that I couldn't take a joke and listen to strangers. During our conversations, he admitted that in the beginning, he didn't believe I actually suffered from face blindness and thought I was using it as an excuse to cheat on him. He claimed that now he does believe me, but, due to bad breakups in the past, he has a hard time trusting that I won't use it as an excuse regardless. He said he was joking about it to make a tough situation lighter and that it was just his sense of humor. He argued that if I loved him, I'd accept that. When I made it clear that I was done with the relationship, things got even worse. He began apologizing profusely, claiming he didn't realize it was such a big deal for me, which didn't make any sense given everything he had said before. In the same breath, he mentioned that at least he told me about his pranks. To those who thought he might have planned to trick me using one of his friends, you may be right. To be honest, I was done. I do care about him a lot. You can't just shut those feelings off. But it's never going to work. There have been countless messages, calls, and attempts to contact me. He hinted vaguely that he had pulled pranks I wasn't aware of. I don't know if that's true or if he's just in a bad place right now. He also came to my place to apologize again. However, I suspect he didn't expect me to immediately recognize him, as he didn't apologize until I said his name. He's not evil, but he's very messed up right now. I blocked him everywhere, told him not to show up anymore, and arranged for a friend to give him his stuff. I'm going to delete this account soon, but I wanted to thank you all for helping me realize the truth. I genuinely don't think I would have figured it out on my own. I'm heartbroken but also a bit relieved. Thanks for all the support and kindness. Relevant comments. Comment. I'm glad you broke up. Someone who loves you shouldn't ever do that to you. Just curious about your condition. Do you also have issues with recognizing voices as well as faces? I can only imagine how hard it must be to deal with. OP. Actually, voices are one of the traits I go by to recognize someone. Voices, posture, tattoos, hairstyle, and so on. Thank you loads. Am I the asshole for not giving my ex the closure he's asking for because he messed with my face blindness? April 21st, 2024. This is probably a bit silly, but that boy has got me questioning my own mind. Either way, sorry if this is a bother. I broke up with my boyfriend a few weeks ago. I had realized, in part thanks to Reddit, that some of his behavior was absolutely not okay, and when I tried to talk to him, the conversation escalated to me breaking up with him. I have a pretty severe case of face blindness, also known as prosopagnosia. It means I can't recognize or remember people's faces and have to rely on other characteristics to identify someone, such as their voice, hairstyle, posture, and so on. People around me know this and introduce themselves when we meet or do other things to make it easier for me. Despite these accommodations, I still suffer from a lot of anxiety because of it. My ex used to try and test me, which gave me a lot of stress. He would change his look without warning to see if I knew it was him, among other things. He called these actions pranks, saying he was just being a jokester. So we broke up. It's been a lot. He's been calling and messaging nonstop with both apologies and non-apologies until I blocked him. In moments of high emotion, I said things like I never wanted to see him again, and he would reply that he was hurt and that I wouldn't even know if it was him, and I was lucky he wouldn't do it. This made me feel very uncomfortable. He contacted me again yesterday through a new account, saying he just wants one more face-to-face conversation, if only to give him his stuff that is still at my place and get some closure so we can both move on. I told him my plan was to get a mutual friend to bring his things over to him. He was hurt by this response. He seemed a lot calmer than before and told me that we were together for a year and he just wanted one conversation after I suddenly broke things off. He said he had some time to process now and doesn't understand how he suddenly became so evil in my eyes that I couldn't have one chat with him after a year of loving each other. Despite his calm demeanor, I don't feel good about it. My gut is telling me this will not be a good conversation, and my worst fears are that he might play a trick to prove some point. Would I be an asshole if I don't reply anymore or just say no? Edit. I didn't expect all these replies. I hope it's okay to respond like this. Thank you all, really. I think I knew already but somehow started to doubt myself. The past few weeks have been a lot. I really appreciate and need these words. I'm ready for all of this to be over and done with. Also, just a little thank you in general. Reddit has been a wonderful community, and it has helped me a lot. Update. Am I the asshole for not giving my ex the closure he's asking for because he messed with my face blindness? May 11th, 2024. Editor's note. Changed initials to names for easier reading. Here's my previous post, for those who are interested. Hi. It's been a while, and since I'm still getting messages about this, I thought I'd just give one big update. More than a month ago, I broke up with my boyfriend because he kept pulling pranks involving my face blindness. I can't recognize faces and have to rely on other characteristics to identify someone, which is still confusing. After the breakup, he kept bugging me to meet up for closure. My gut told me not to, but I felt guilty. With your advice and my own gut feeling in mind, I decided not to meet him. I asked a friend, Roger, to bring him his stuff and kept him blocked, including blocking the new accounts he made. Roger returned with a letter from him, which was very apologetic. He took full responsibility and said he'd respect it if I chose not to reply. While I appreciated the gesture, I decided not to get in touch as I was still processing the breakup myself. However, he didn't let go as he said he would. Roger and other mutual friends told me he was asking about me a lot, wondering if I had read the letter and if I was seeing someone else already. A couple of days ago he showed up at my place, clearly not sober and very upset. Feeling sorry for him, I let him in, but as he sobered up, he became angrier. I messaged everyone I knew to come over as I didn't feel comfortable being alone with him. He accused me of not caring about him and claimed I had cheated on him without knowing it, suggesting he had his friend Mike, who has similar characteristics to him, kiss me on a night out without my knowledge. This made me feel sick to my stomach, thinking they might have played me. When I told him to leave, he refused, but thankfully, my friends arrived and got him out. I'm incredibly grateful for the people around me. Now I'm staying at my parents' place, taking a break from work, and looking into therapy. My parents, who have always been supportive. My dad even got a tattoo years ago, so I'd never doubt it was him, are treating me like a princess and reminding me of the kindness people deserve. I haven't looked into a restraining order yet, but I might if this continues. Thanks to all of you for helping me see what's right in this situation. Reddit has been a wonderful community, and I'm very grateful. This will probably be my last update as this chapter is over, but I'm glad I got to pour my heart out to y'all. I have face blindness, and I don't know if I'm losing my mind or my ex is messing with me. June 30th, 2024. We broke up nearly 3 months ago, and it wasn't pretty. There were a lot of things that were not right between us. Among other things, he kept messing around and joking about the fact that I have a severe case of face blindness. I want to clarify that I wasn't perfect in this relationship either. I'm not trying to make him out to be the villain. Typically, I rely on voices, obvious traits, and so on to recognize people. I'm fortunate enough to have many wonderful people around me who'll introduce themselves once we start talking, warn me if they change their looks, or even get or wear something that'll help me. For instance, my dad got a tattoo just for me. But it's still hard and gives me so much anxiety. So maybe I'm imagining it all. I stayed with my parents and young cousins for a while after the breakup, but since I've been home, I feel like he's still around. The first time this happened, I went to a club with a friend and her boyfriend. I started dancing with a guy and then went outside with him to get some air. The moment we stepped outside and I heard his voice, I knew it was him. I was so sure. I freaked out, went back inside, and left with my friend. I messaged him later, and he denied it vehemently, telling me he wasn't even near there and that we could meet up and talk if I wanted. My friend said she wasn't sure, as she was off with her boyfriend and didn't see him. So maybe I'm wrong. My gut says it was him, but I can't trust my brain with these things. There have been more incidents like this since. If I go out, sometimes I just feel like he's there. I'll see a guy focused on me and will know it's him, but he'll deny it. Or someone will come to my job, and I'll recognize the voice, but he responds so confused that I feel like a crazy person making a scene, so I just quietly give him what he needs. I'll go to the grocery store, and a guy will suddenly be next to me. He won't even say anything to me, but the smell and traits tell me it's him. But later, he denies it all. It's not every day or anything like that. Once a week, maybe not even that. But it's enough to make me feel so on edge. The thing is, I could be wrong. Maybe it was never him. I don't go out much anymore unless I'm with someone. I keep my phone in my hand in hopes of snapping a picture to show my friends. I'm looking into getting a camera. I don't know what else to do, really. I'm afraid if I talk to others about it, they'll simply dismiss it. At the same time, he's still messaging me, just as kindly as when we first started dating. He says he's worried about me and wants to help. And I just feel like I'm going crazy. Maybe I am. Has anyone ever messed with your prosopagnosia before? What did you do? July 2nd, 2024. I have a quite severe case of face blindness, but I have my own ways to get around, like many of us do. However, I can never be completely sure who's in front of me until they confirm it. I'm sure you know the feeling. Now, I have had wonderful people in my life who make it so much easier for me. But have you ever had people who don't do that? My previous boyfriend used to mess with me sometimes, and I sometimes worry he might still be. But it's hard to be sure when I can't trust what I see. Sometimes I'm so sure it's him, but he'll deny it, and I can never convince myself to be 100% certain of what I saw. Do you have any things you did to deal with people who messed with you? Or didn't take your prosopagnosia seriously? New update. Update. I have face blindness and I don't know if I'm losing my mind or my ex is messing with me. Turns out, it's both. July 19th, 2024 first. Thanks to the mods for allowing me to post this update. I don't know if anyone will see this, but I keep getting messages about this, very kind ones, for which I'm grateful, and thought I'd just do a wee update. I'm not in the best place mentally, so I will keep this short. This will also be my last one, as I've taken plenty of your time as is and don't really know what to do with the attention, though I'm extremely appreciative of all the support and advice. I posted here a while ago about how I wasn't sure if my ex was messing with me, and my face blindness, or if I was just being paranoid. I now know it's both. I really did feel like a crazy person. The day I made the post, I broke off contact with him again. I got a few more messages from him, all kind and concerned-ish. Even some mutual friends, and one girl I barely know, reached out, saying they were worried because of what my ex told them. But here's the thing, I did manage to subtly make 2 videos, 2 different times, in which my parents could clearly see him. Honestly, I was an absolute mess. Since then, I've also been staying with my parents again and took a break from work. We're trying to look into a restraining order, but it's not that easy. However, there is some redemption. Roger, a buddy, exposed him entirely, doing what I lacked the guts to do. After that, I received some extremely angry messages from my ex, who stated things like, he just happened to be in the same place. Because of my fears, I'm now making him out to be a stalker. However, this doesn't explain how it happened at least twice in less than 2 weeks, or why he didn't just declare it was him. That's where we're at right now. I wish I could tell you more. I'm kind of stuck right now. I have no proof about the previous times. Even more so, there have been moments in the past weeks where I also thought it was him, and it wasn't, either confirmed by video or because I wasn't alone. Then there have been some times in the last weeks where I didn't manage to get any recording or photo. Though I am relieved to have some answers, I'm also heartbroken. I don't know how to process knowing there are people who will abuse my flaws in this way. I feel incredibly paranoid, and it's exhausting. I'm looking into moving away. At the same time, I'm hopeful this is the end of it, that him getting exposed will be the end of this. Multiple people have told him to back off and leave me alone. I'm happy to be home with my parents for now. I'm safe, thanks for all the advice. Relevant comments. Comment, dude is an abusive psycho. Put him on blast. He has serious mental problems. OP. I'm gonna sound like an absolute idiot, but I still often feel conflicted about it. I wish he'd just admit to everything. There's a lot of things that feel uncertain and I'm having a hard time letting those go. Like, I only have proof about those 2 times. What if he's right and it was only those 2? Still wouldn't be okay, but IDK. Either way, just hope it all ends here.
Am I the A for ruining my best friend's wedding and losing our friendship because I wore a gold dress to the ceremony? I will link the dress. I put gold in quotation marks because I think it's more bronze orange, but maybe I'm splitting hairs and AMTA. Some context. My 30F best friend Dan, 30M, got married to Lauren, 27F, yesterday. Dan and I have been best friends since high school, and despite always being platonic with no romantic interests on either side, his now wife Lauren has always disliked me. In their 3 years of dating, I have not been allowed to see Dan alone because she feels that it's suspicious that I want to hang out with him. Honestly, I just missed my friend. Despite me being happily married, she's always kept me at arm's length. I always figured this was because she's from a very conservative family. Dan has spoken to her multiple times, and after she'll back off for a bit before reverting to complaining about him being friends with a girl again. It's not ideal, but she makes Dan happy, so I made my peace with it. That brings us to the wedding. Originally I was going to be in the groom's party, but Lauren ended up crying, saying a wedding is not a place to swap gender roles. Dan was fighting her on this, but I told him I'll just attend as a guest, and not to choose this hill to die on. The dress code was warm tone garden party, and we were encouraged to wear earthy warm colors. I picked out a bronze/orange dress that I thought fit this perfectly, and the style even matched some examples they gave. In short, I thought I had nailed it. The wedding went great, however at the reception Lauren dragged me aside and said, "I cannot believe you would wear gold to my wedding. You're not the first prize, you're just *** king trashy." I was so shocked the moment I just stared at her. She practically screamed at me to leave, and she was drawing attention, so I grabbed my husband, said goodbye to Dan and left. Dan reached out after and told me he was upset I left his wedding so soon. Lauren's mom has texted me saying I ruined the wedding for her daughter and I'm stupid for wearing a gold dress. She's saying it's as bad as wearing white. I was genuinely not aware this was a thing. I want to reach out to Dan to explain, but I don't know if I'm in the wrong here. AITA, relevant comments. Any chance you or Dan have a crush on each other? I am happily married, and Dan and I would rather eat glass than have anything romantic happen between us. We are just not each other's type and see each other as siblings. I genuinely don't think Dan has ever secretly liked me either. Commenter, downvoted. While I believe you, I have to think Dan has made comments about you around his wife for her to go so nuclear on you. Not to be weird, but how would you rate your attractiveness compared with hers? Are you similar, or is there a big gap in your attractiveness? OP, that's hard to answer. We are two totally different people. I think we are both attractive in our own way. I am your Barbie stereotype, 5'11", blonde hair with a six-pack. She's a petite brunette bombshell with a beautiful tan and a full figure. I'm also a good 2 inches taller than Dan, hence he's not my type, I'm not his. So it's comparing apples and oranges. But I do get your point. Commenter, have you and Dan ever had a convo about why you aren't allowed to be alone with him? OP, not just me but any woman. She doesn't believe in platonic friendships with the opposite sex. Why does Lauren's mom have your number? Can't you just forward that message to Dan? My guess is the group chat from the hens party. Lauren didn't have bridesmaids and her mom organized the hens night with a group text chat. Honestly, my husband told me they were acting crazy. I just needed an outside opinion before I called Dan, so hubby said I should post here. How were you going to be a part of the groom's party if she didn't have any bridesmaids? She technically had her mom as a MOH figure, I guess. She stood up there with her and organized the hens party. But they were just going to go with unequal numbers, and in the end, he just had his brother there with him. Update. Wow guys, I genuinely didn't know what to expect posting to strangers on this, but I am so thankful to my husband for suggesting this. I needed a non-biased view on this wearing gold to a wedding issue, and now it's clear that that was never the issue. Many of you asked if the dress I wore stood out, and honestly I know I'm biased saying this, but I genuinely don't think so. Another girl was wearing the exact same dress but in a dark red, which we had a laugh about. Slip dresses are a pretty common wedding guest dress where I am, and it was the type of dress that was recommended by the bride. I think many of you were right in saying that it was never about the dress, but how I looked wearing it. I do want to start this update by thanking my husband who suggested I post here, and having a ball reading your comments since posting, and even posting a photo of us this morning with a caption along the lines of "my gold prize of a wife, I am winning in life thanks to you." Turns out Dan found out pretty quickly what actually happened and called me last night. Apparently Lauren's mom had told him I was really drunk and told Lauren her dress wasn't it, so I was requested to leave. Dan had his suspicions that it was bullsh*t, but it wasn't until his mom called him that confirmed it. Turns out she was nearby when Lauren pulled me aside and ironically was actually wearing a yellow gold dress and tore him a new one about letting Lauren treat me like that. Dan didn't have a solution when he called. I could tell he was emotionally exhausted and pretty defeated. He said he wished I had taken it out on the open bar rather than leaving, but he understood why I left. He thanked me for taking the high road and that it hasn't gone unnoticed. He apologized for what happened. Apparently this is an ongoing fight between him and Lauren. For all of those who said Lauren just hates me, it turns out it's 100% true. Apparently, she has been trying to convince Dan to cut me off because that's what a good husband does. He said he thought she had gotten over it now that they were married. I told him that he needs to focus on his happiness and that I will always be here to support him and that I will take a step back if that's what he needs. They were supposed to leave for their honeymoon yesterday. But when Dan called they were still at home, so who knows? I've blocked Lauren and her mom and forwarded the messages to Dan as recommended. Thanks again everyone for your comments and judgment. New update. So, it's been a couple of months and a bit has happened. The situation seemed to resonate with quite a few people, so I thought I would provide a final update. Thank you to everyone who has messaged. It did help me feel a little less crazy during this time. And to the person who let me know I can simply post an update here, thank you. I had no idea how this all worked. So, Lauren ended up finding the post on TikTok and was understandably pissed. She called me from Dan's phone and started screaming at me, saying I had ruined her wedding and that I knew what I was doing wearing a dress like that to the wedding. After the initial shock of expecting Dan and getting Lauren screaming, I yelled, "What kind of dress? The same cut that Amy wore? Someone else has worn the same dress but in a different color. F***ck, I just can't win with you. Dress nicely and I'm out to get you. Dress casually and I'm taking the P***ss. I've tried so hard with you but I'm done." And hung up. I messaged Dan, "I clearly can't be in your life with everything the way it is right now. Good luck, I'll always be a call away." Before blocking the number, which broke my heart. That was 3 months ago and I didn't hear anything except from Dan's mother saying Lauren wouldn't stop complaining about me, and life continued. In this time I also discovered I'm pregnant. Me and hubby made a post a couple of weeks ago announcing this, which is on its way to Dan, turned up at my front door a few days after. We talked over many drinks on his end and mocktails on mine. He told me that he always thought it was the right thing to do to listen to your partner's boundaries and insecurities, and that Lauren has a lot of body image issues which resulted in her being suspicious of other women, so he thought the right thing was to support her, but he got lost in setting his own boundaries when it came to how she controlled his interactions with his friends. He said the whole situation forced him to think about her boundaries and her own personal standards, and saw that they consistently contradict each other. Like, she believes, rightly so, that women are allowed to wear whatever they feel comfortable in, but she would complain that I was unreasonable for wearing bikinis to family beach days because it was inappropriate. Dan also realized she was trying to cut out his sister, and literally every woman in his life, including his boss, insisting he get another job. By the time he had heard about my pregnancy, he told me he didn't want to be an absent friend through this, and so had a serious conversation with Lauren. I won't go into details, but the result was that they are currently separated and both in therapy. Dan asked Lauren to move out, and she is currently staying with her mom, who is apparently convinced I'm the devil. Whilst I am sad for Dan's relationship having to end like this, I am happy to see that he is starting to learn what a healthy relationship is and that he will be able to be my friend through my pregnancy. My husband is excited to have his gaming buddy back. I reached out to Lauren with Dan's permission, letting her know I'm here to talk in a therapy session if she felt like it would help, but I haven't received a response yet, and maybe that's for the best. I can't help but feel bad on some days, because I know that a lot of this is born from insecurity. But I'm trying to focus on the positives that both of them are in therapy, and hopefully we'll move on to bigger and better things. I'm sorry if this update is a bit scattered as well. Pregnancy brain has been hitting me hard. This update has been read and approved by Dan. OP's comment: "Thank you, we are very excited. And while I can't talk to Lauren's motivations, I do agree that whatever issues you are going through are not an excuse to push unfair boundaries. I am in awe of Dan's strength that he has shown in the last couple of weeks. If they continue their relationship, I know it will be on better terms for both of them."
Wife accused me of cheating whenever I talked to a woman. We tried therapy, but it didn't work. Then she slept with a guy to make me understand. Wife accused me of cheating every time I talked to a woman, so we tried therapy, but it didn't help. Then she slept with a guy to let me know how it feels. My name is John, and I am 30 years old. I met my wife Claudia, who is 28 years old, when I was in college. At that time, I was majoring in business economics, while Claudia was studying English. We first crossed paths at the house of a mutual friend. We hit it off pretty well and dated for a couple of years. Sometime after we both graduated, I decided to propose to her, and she said yes right away. That's the summarized version of our courtship, since I don't think there's anything really noteworthy in there. We've been married for 4 years now. I think I started to notice some changes in my wife. By the way, let me just say that her name is Claudia as a pseudonym. After we got married, I think about a year after it started, after she walked in on me and a female colleague together at a bar. I know it sounds bad, but it was an entirely innocuous situation. A bunch of us co-workers went out after work for some drinks, which isn't an unusual occurrence, and as people started to leave one by one, it was eventually only me and this colleague left at the bar. Claudia walked in with her friends, and they came to say hi to us. I returned the greeting normally because it's not like I felt like I was doing something wrong, but it was when Claudia got back home after me that everything hit the fan. When she walked in, she threw her purse down and came stomping towards me. She pointed a finger in my face and started screaming about how she caught me in the ACT cheating on her. I tried my best to tell her that wasn't the situation, but she honestly didn't let me get a word out. When she finally calmed down, only after calling me every terrible thing a person can call a cheater, I explained the situation to her, even showing her photos that the group of us had taken earlier that night. I also pointed out to her that I didn't react strangely when she came with her friends because I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong, and I had hoped it would be evident. After my explanation, she said okay, seeming to have finally understood. She stood there for a few seconds like she wanted to say something, and then she went into the room. This was quite some time ago, but it still irks me to this day that she never apologized after all of that. However, the reason why I'm retelling this whole episode is because that was the point where she seemed to become clingy and overly jealous. I would sense mood shifts if I looked in the direction of a woman or simply answered a few questions for a woman, even if she was just asking for directions. I also noticed that these rules didn't seem to apply to women who were very obviously not a threat. I think a sensible amount of jealousy is healthy because it allows for the enforcement of boundaries, but it's very easy to tell when it's excessive. In her case, it just seemed to become excessive after that episode, which didn't make sense to me because she had no reason to be so wary of me in the presence of other women. Most of the time, I'll know that an interaction with a woman has soured her because I'll notice a shift in her emotions, but it is only some of the time that she actually starts something. It's never a civil discussion, as she always gets emotional around the topic, and to say it drives me crazy is an understatement because she'll always cite the smallest thing as the reason she suspects me. For instance, There was a time when she caught me and one of the female neighbors in our apartment building talking in the hallway. We were literally just talking about some basic politics, and Claudia walked out of our apartment, saw us in the hallway, and walked back in. As soon as I saw that happen, I knew I'd be in for it at that very moment. I'll admit that I thought of divorce because honestly, I knew that I couldn't keep living that way. It was highly draining. The only thing was I felt like it'd be better for us to approach couples therapy first, at least before I ended things with her. After all, I love her. So we tried that, and truth be told, it helped at least in the immediate period. But things took a comedic turn when she felt the therapist was taking my side too often. And then the therapist was the next person who Claudia assumed was trying to sleep with me. I remember laughing out loud the day she expressed that thought. It didn't make the situation better, but I couldn't help it. We eventually switched to a male therapist, and with that, the sessions were at least able to go on much longer, at least until the point where it seemed like the changes were actually sticking in her head. We went several months without an incident, so it finally seemed like there was progress. Well, at least until the point that I'm writing this post about. The last several months have been normal, like how things were between us before the hyper-jealousy even became a thing. However, I think things blew up when Rebecca, the same colleague who was in the bar with me years back, came to the house to hand over some documents when I wasn't there, since I was meant to be working from home the next week. I think my wife recognized her from the first time around, and I don't know whether she had a Winter Soldier moment or whether it was simply because a woman came directly to the house looking for me, but all hell broke loose when I got back home. She started howling at me the moment that I walked through the door, and I was greeted with the documents being thrown in my face. She asked me why Rebecca knew where I lived, according to her. Before I could even answer, it was because I must have brought her there before to sleep with her. The real answer was simply that I had told her where I lived when she said she wanted to drop the documents off. It didn't help that Rebecca is quite a curvy woman. So it then moved into a rant about how I must like women who are more endowed than she is, and I must have been sleeping with them all over town. She even said she was going to get herself tested for STDs because she was entirely convinced that I had cheated on her numerous times. Once she was done raving, I walked into the house, took a few basic things that I would need, and I walked out. I honestly had nothing to say to her, especially not in that state. I also knew that no matter what I had to say, it probably wouldn't enter her head because when she's in that emotional state, the voice of reason doesn't get to her. I knew it'd be better for me to leave the house entirely, so I did that. I heard her shouting behind me, "Enjoy Rebecca's bed now." This happened very recently, and I've been sleeping in a hotel since then. The thing is, I am set on divorcing her because I really can't live several more decades of my life, best case scenario, dealing with a woman who thinks that I'm cheating with every other woman in existence. The problem is, I know that the therapy sessions help to some degree, and I'm fighting within myself, trying to figure out whether I should try and attend sessions with her again or whether I should just give up. I think this is the decision I need help with, so I'd love it if you could all give me your opinions and thoughts on the situation. Edit. I've noticed several comments suggesting that I've already done enough and that it's time to let go of our relationship. In many ways, I agree with this sentiment. I worry that, regardless of how many therapy sessions we go through, it might only take one small incident for her to revert to her extreme jealousy. This constant fear of triggering her insecurities is draining, and it's not fair to either of us. Living under such tight control is not sustainable, and I'm exhausted from constantly having to prove my fidelity. While I may not proceed with a divorce immediately, I am now more open to the idea than ever before. The thought of ending our marriage is heartbreaking, but it may be the only way for both of us to find peace. If this issue arises again, I think I'll be ready to end it for good. To be completely honest, living under such tight control is not sustainable, and I am exhausted. However, I also don't want to live with any regrets. Therefore, I plan to give her one last chance, but if it happens again, that will be the end for me. This last chance is not just for her, but also for me to be sure that I did everything I could to save our marriage. I'm not very hopeful though, so I'm slowly preparing myself for the possibility of being single again. The thought of starting over is daunting, but it's better than enduring a life filled with mistrust and constant accusations. I've reached a point where my mental health and well-being are more important than holding on to a relationship that causes me so much stress. It is what it is, and sometimes, letting go is the best thing we can do for ourselves. Update 1. Well, here's an update that I wasn't expecting at all, and I don't even know how to express how freaking pissed off I am with this new development. As I mentioned in my last post, I was starting to get more comfortable with the idea of divorce, but I wanted to give her one more chance to improve. The good thing is that it didn't take long for it to become clear that she's never going to get better, and she showed me in the most obvious way possible. I realized there was a problem when we attended a friend's barbecue. Claudia was being unusually touchy with someone there. We didn't know the person, but I asked the host, who is my good friend, and he told me that the guy was recently divorced and worked in the construction industry. I was concerned because my wife had never been so touchy with anyone but me, so it was obviously strange behavior. This was about 2 weeks after the last episode I described in my previous post. Anyway, I tried my best to keep an eye on her during the barbecue and avoided making a scene. When we got home, I spoke to her about it. She didn't seem apologetic and said, "Well, now you know how it feels then." That left me speechless because it was basically her admitting that she was rubbing up on that guy intentionally to make me jealous. It was so stupid to me since it wasn't even a sensible comparison. She gets jealous when other women speak to me. I've never thrown myself at them or gotten touchy. It was far from the same thing. She even added, "Are you just jealous because he's a handsome guy? Because he's more fit than you?" At that point, I walked out because I was starting to get to the point of anger where I wanted to hit something. She said nothing as I turned and left, and honestly, I knew for a fact that I was going to get in contact with a divorce lawyer. I didn't return to the house for 3 days. The funny thing is, even if I hadn't been sure enough, she solidified my decision the very next day. I got a call from my friend who hosted the barbecue. His name is Bill and he seemed pretty serious. He said we should meet, so I agreed. When I met him, he told me that his friend, the one Claudia was talking to, called him. According to him, the guy said that he had hooked up with Claudia the day before, which was the day after I left the house, and he wanted to know what Bill thought about her since she said she was single. I must have zoned out at that point because I honestly can't remember what was said after that. By hooked up, it seemed clear they had sex, and Claudia presented herself as single. The worst part is I might not have found out if the other guy hadn't talked to Bill about it. My head was spinning, and I didn't know what to think or how to proceed at that moment. Bill saw I wasn't paying attention, so he waited for me to come back. He said he told the guy that Claudia was married, and the guy seemed genuinely shocked. Apparently, she gave no indication that she was married, and he told Bill, "Forget I asked, and I'll forget about her immediately." Bill finished telling me all of this, and I went home right away to confront her. I didn't rehearse anything and was ready to let my pure anger guide me because, honestly, was there anything to rehearse that would best express how to handle someone who is cheating on you? When I walked back into the house, I wouldn't say she was in a good mood, but she was more chatty than usual after something like that. She still had an obvious attitude because the first thing she said was, "Didn't expect to see you back already," with a stupid grin on her face. She was clearly trying to rile me up, and it worked because the first thing I said was, "Shut up." I've never been so curt, and she seemed taken aback. I then said, "You slept with a guy from the barbecue. Don't even think of denying it. You cheated on me, Claudia." She stood there for a few seconds before sheepishly saying, "Now you know how it feels." It came out almost in a whisper, so I know she must have realized how stupid it sounded. I'm not proud of it, but I threw one of our ceramic kitchen ornaments at her feet. I was pissed off by that stupid comment because I've never even come close to cheating on her, so for her to see this as retribution was crazy. I can't remember what I said after this, but I remember a lot of cursing, screaming and explaining. I told her she was crazy if she thought this made any sense. I told her she had never caught me even close to cheating, that she constantly overreacted to the slightest interactions I had with women, and that she was delusional to think I had ever shown signs of unfaithfulness. I pointed out that all the things that triggered her were always women's actions toward me, never mine toward them. Despite the many times she accused me of cheating, she never had definitive proof of a single one. It was all in her head, and I told her she needed help. I think that was the moment I expressed everything I'd ever wanted to scream at her. When I was done, she said nothing. She just stood there. I asked if she had anything to say, but she said nothing at all and just shook her head slightly. I told her to pack a few of her things and leave. Again, she stood there for a bit before walking to the bedroom. She came out about an hour later with her suitcase packed, and I haven't seen her since then. This time, I definitely don't need any help figuring out what to do next. I've already contacted a divorce lawyer, and I really want to make sure I hurt her in the split because I've put up with way too much over the years. I'm so exhausted and annoyed that this is what it had to come to. I'll update you all once the divorce is finalized and I know where I stand. Update 2. I am incredibly happy to share this update and feel like a massive weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Honestly, I feel fantastic. In a previous post I described my extremely jealous wife who constantly accused me of cheating or being interested in other women. Her decision to intentionally make me jealous and then sleep with another man was the final straw. I quickly contacted a divorce lawyer, and it didn't take long for the papers to be prepared. I made sure she was served at her workplace. For context, she works at a publishing company, so I'm certain this created some office gossip. In fact, I know it did because she sent me an angry text that evening, accusing me of embarrassing her and being vindictive. Fast forward to the divorce proceedings, I realized I had messed up big time because I had no concrete evidence that she cheated on me. I didn't record my conversation with Bill or the confession from her affair partner. I tried to see if Bill could get the affair partner to admit it again, but that wasn't feasible. However, I managed to convince the court by explaining her jealousy, the couples therapy we attended, and recounting the entire story honestly. She attempted to spin the story in her favor from the start, but it was transparent. Thankfully, in the end, I received a very favorable outcome. I got to keep the house, which was fair since I lived there before she moved in. It was determined that there was no need for me to pay alimony, even though I earned more than her, because the difference wasn't significant enough and the judge didn't want to reward her behavior. Fortunately, we didn't have any children, which was a relief. I was glad to be free of any ties to her. I also think I got off easy because I agreed to let her take several pieces of furniture and appliances from the house. I did this mainly because I didn't want daily reminders of her around. So that's it, I'm finally free of her. While it's painful to realize that I spent so many years being falsely accused of cheating and then actually being cheated on, I'm relieved to be in a position where I know it won't happen again. Now, it's time to move on to the next chapter of my life. After 56 years of searching, my dad's biological parents were finally reunited with him through a Christmas gift DNA test surprise. Original post, June 5, 2024. I'm not sure this is the place to post this, but I just want to get my excitement out somewhere, so I figured that this counts as getting it off my chest. Shout out to r/, who helped me discover this subreddit. As you would expect from the title, my dad, 56 years old, was adopted at birth. He was raised in eastern Canada and never really searched for his birth parents. The people who raised him are his parents to him, and he loves them very much. They have always been amazing grandparents to my sister, 19 years old, and me, 22 years old. All he had from his birth parents was a letter which told him he was born out of love, but they could not support him when he was born. So when my sister decided to get him a genetic test for Christmas, it was purely with the intention to find out what ethnicity we all are. And the thought of finding his birth parents didn't even cross our minds. Eventually, when we got his results, we were surprised to find the names of two people with perfect genetic matches to my dad. He had the option to reach out to them, so he wrote them each an email and just waited for their responses. Almost immediately, his biological dad, who I'll call Jim, not his real name, responded. He said how excited and happy he was to have found my dad and how he was looking for him for so long. My dad, who is usually an emotionally reserved man, was curled up on the couch grinning as he was texting Jim for the first time. I was still in shock from the news, but was so happy to see my dad, even happier than when I graduated university. Soon thereafter, he also received a message from his biological mom, Debbie, not her real name. By talking to them both, my dad learned the story of his birth, and I think that it's absolutely wild. Debbie is the daughter of an Australian mining engineer, and they all moved to Canada for his work when she was in high school. Later on they moved to the Midwest, where she met Jim at the age of 17. They were high school sweethearts and were thinking of marriage after they graduated, but then Debbie got pregnant. This being the 60s, this was a huge deal. Her dad was furious and sent her back to Canada to give birth and arranged a private adoption, as he knew of a couple who were trying to have a kid, my grandparents. Once she gave birth, she was able to let Jim know that she was being sent back to Australia. They never saw each other again for the next 40 years. Jim apparently was only able to move on once he received a letter over 5 years later from Debbie, saying that she got married. Eventually, he got married too and they moved to the West Coast, but his wife got into a terrible car crash and lost the use of both legs and one arm, so they were never able to have kids. Debbie had 3 daughters in Australia, the oldest of which is 7 years younger than my dad. They saw each other for the first time around 12 years ago as they reconnected on Facebook, and Debbie happened to be taking a trip to the west coast of America. Both Jim and Debbie had always wanted to keep my dad, and so they tried for decades to find him. But my province apparently is one of the hardest places in the world to find adoption information, especially since my dad only received his birth certificate at his baptism. So their names were not on it. Jim had essentially given up trying to find my dad until genetic tests became popular. He asked Debbie to take every single one, and he did the same, about 5 years ago, in the hopes that one day my dad would take one. When he received my dad's message, he immediately wrote to Debbie, "I found him." Since then, we have had several calls with Jim and his wife, and they are absolutely lovely. We are their only family since they don't have kids, and I couldn't be happier. At the end of the month, we'll be flying to the West Coast to meet them. It has been harder to talk to Debbie as Australia is so many hours ahead of us, but she also is so kind and an absolute joy to talk to. I haven't met my 3 new aunts yet, but apparently one lives in London. It's crazy to think that I might have been within a few kilometers of her the few times I visited. I also have 5 new younger cousins. A couple of them are huge fans of Japanese culture, so they're ecstatic to hear that they have half Japanese cousins. My mom is Japanese Canadian, so my sister and I are both half. We hope to visit them one day in Australia, but we might all meet up in Japan next year. I don't know how to end this. I am still processing everything. It's absolutely incredible to have my family grow so much, but also a little overwhelming. I'm so happy for my dad, for Jim and for Debbie, and am so excited to get to know them better. I hope I get to meet my new cousins soon too. I feel so incredibly lucky that this happened, seemingly against all odds. My dad was initially raised Francophone, so it's a miracle that they even speak the same language. Anyways, thank you so much for taking the time to read through this, and my apologies for how long this post ended up being. I might post an update after I meet Jim and his wife. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Highlight comments. A user shared a heartwarming story, saying, "I love stories like this. Congratulations on your bonus family. My husband found out and met a brother he didn't know about. His mom had a baby with her college sweetheart and gave him up for adoption. Later, she had my husband and his sister. About 9 years ago, the brother got in touch with us. We met him, his wife, and their adult daughter. They are great people. We see them when we can. We live in separate parts of the country and keep up by phone, Zoom, etc. The entire extended family has welcomed them, and they are always included in family reunions and other gatherings. They are a great bonus family, and we love them," another user commented. "It brought me joy to read your story. Those DNA kits are amazing, aren't they? I'm honestly not sure if I found my recent 4-5 generations ancestral history more fascinating or those going back to more ancient times. There are free sites you can join and upload your DNA kit. Ancestry allows the file download, and others that I forget, that trace your DNA markers back thousands of years. Mine identified multiple royal houses from medieval times and earlier, as well as ancient native chiefs that I shared genetic markers with. It's truly incredible the information you can find from that little saliva sample. More than 20 years ago, I started trying to help my dad find his biological father. Prior to that, he had always told me we had no relatives with our last name because his father was a mystery who had only passed on his genetics and name. His mother wouldn't talk about him. And all my dad ever knew was that his father had left him, his mother, and his 2 siblings when my dad was 4, more than likely leaving other children they didn't know about. He had turned up about 4 hours away 16 years later with a phone call to my grandmother, wanting to know if he could return to town without problems, assuming he meant child support. The call didn't go well. Aside from that, all he knew was this man's full name and birth date. Long story short, between internet searches and finally doing ancestry DNA, I managed to locate 2 of his daughters, neither of whom knew of each other or their other half-siblings, my grandfather's half-siblings, including one great-aunt with whom I bonded very strongly, and also figured out the lost truth of who my grandfather's birth parents were. The DNA results led me to the identity of his mother, whom nobody could ever determine before, and the fact that his paternal grandparents had raised him. Even more interesting was learning that the last name we had inherited from him wasn't even an ancestral name, but given as a result of an illegal name change. Wild stuff that made a lot makes more sense. Despite discovering all of this and making the connections with family who had known him, he was just as much a ghost to them as he was to us. I was praying to find him before he passed, fearing he would be alone, possibly even unidentified, as we had heard rumors that he had been homeless. I searched death records too. It was almost a year ago that I finally found him. The great aunt with whom I had bonded so strongly, despite being twice my age, was also researching our genealogy, and she would periodically send me a bunch of emails with files and records. One day, it hit me that I hadn't heard from her in a while, not since she had sent a bunch of emails I had yet to look at. I had forgotten about them. Sadly, I also discovered that day that she had passed away. I had no idea, but she did share something that led to me finding my grandfather within hours. Unfortunately, what I found was an unclaimed box of remains and belongings that had been sitting in the basement of a county clerk's office, nearly 12 years after he passed. I was too late, but I still went and brought him home, where he should have been. I tell this story, apologies for the length, I did shorten it as much as I really could, because I feel it's important for us to discover our roots and the stories of our ancestors. They're honestly fascinating. All of the people who knew the truth in my family either passed or weren't talking, but those truths are still out in the open. My dad knows who his people were, finally, and we've built wonderful relationships with most of those who are still living. Only a small few have opted not to extend their family to include us, and that's okay. In response, another user replied, "Wow, that's an incredible family story. I'm very happy that you managed to find people that you connected with so much, but I am very sorry that you didn't find your grandfather in time. Still, it must feel very good to have closure and know so much more about your family's history." Jim has done a lot of genealogy, so we found out we're descended from British and Scottish settlers who fought in the American Revolution. Beyond that, we're not so sure. My grandmother on my dad's side is descended from the Filles du Roi, who were some of the first women to come to New France, so in that way we feel very Quebecois even if we're not genetically so. My mom's family came over from Japan 100 years ago, but it's much harder to find documents from there since we can't read them, and they're not as common on ancestry sites. Thank you very much for your contribution, and I hope you have a great time with your new family. Update, July 1st, 2024. First of all, thank you so much to everyone who left such kind and heartfelt comments on my first post. It's incredible hearing all of your stories. To those who were concerned that we would abandon my grandparents that I grew up with, that is most definitely not the case. They were the people I grew up with, and I absolutely love them to bits. Although only my grandmother is still with us. All the incredible times I've had with her growing up are so much more important than blood, and I can't comprehend the stories I read where people forget about their adoptive parents or grandparents when they find their biological ones. I won't recap my previous post here because I'm lazy, haha. We just got back from visiting Jim and his wife, whom I'll call Mary, not her real name, on the West Coast, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. We spent a week in their city and got to experience so much with them. Our first time meeting them in person was very emotional and felt surreal. We spent the whole day looking through my dad's and our old photos, basically catching Jim up on everything he missed over the past 56 years. We also got to see so many of his and Mary's old photos too, which was very cool. We went to a park near their house, and on the walk, I heard Jim whisper "my son," with a massive smile on his face. Throughout the week, we explored their city and saw so many cool sights and tried so much delicious food. Mary knows her city so well, and it was great to see her favorite spots all around the city, from food carts to gardens to museums. We all went to an incredible Japanese-American museum, and Jim and Mary absolutely loved it. They were very keen to learn about the internment during World War II and said they knew a bit about it before, but now it feels so personal. We went on 2 hikes with Jim. Mary wasn't able to come because she is in a wheelchair. It's so cool to have such an active and outdoorsy grandfather who can go on such long hikes. He taught us some foraging tips and told us stories from when he used to camp for years on end. Both he and Mary are very spiritual, so he also told us great stories from meditation retreats they've done. He's even tried psychedelics, so he's definitely the cool grandpa. I won't go into precise details of places we went to, but it was great exploring such a cool part of the world with amazing people. We were all very sad when the trip was over and we had to leave. I've gained 2 new grandparents on the West Coast, and I couldn't be happier. And they said that they've gained 2 grandchildren. I'm so glad that they see us as such. Mary told me her greatest regret in life was not being able to have children and grandchildren, but now she does. This has been such a transformative time in our lives, and I think it's incredible just how many people are so much happier now because my sister just happened to get my dad a DNA test. This is just the beginning of our relationship with our new grandparents, and I am so excited. Now we have to figure out a way to go to Australia to meet Debbie. Whenever that happens, maybe I'll make another update. Until then, I hope you all have a lovely day, and thank you so much for taking the time to read our story highlighted comments. Firstly, one commenter shared. It's kind of surprising how distant a relationship with someone will show up in a DNA test. I didn't have any surprises with my close family, but finding 3rd and 4th cousins on my mom's side helped confirm some potentially shaky genealogy research I'm working on for her family. She was a product of her mother's 4th marriage. 2 of the previous ones we had no idea about, so she has siblings she didn't know existed, and they were abandoned by her father when she was a kid, so I didn't really grow up with any connection to them. Trying to piece together the timeline of her parents' lives has been difficult. DNA connections confirmed a lot of things I would have otherwise discarded as improbable. Another commenter advised. I'd recommend putting some serious thought into whether it's worth giving these companies your data because once you do, you have zero control over where it ends up or what it gets used for. There have already been some massive breaches, and that sort of data could end up affecting more than just you. Lastly, one shared a personal story. Honestly, go for it because you never know. Less happy story, but my mom is adopted and took a genetic test mostly for fun and wanting health history since she is getting older. After a year, she got pinged on one with a young man who turned out to be her nephew. From there, she found a half-sister and we learned my mom's biological dad never even knew about my mom. From what we understand, he was dating a girl in college, but they broke up when he decided to study abroad. She learned she was pregnant during this time and must have just never told him. She had my mom, gave her up and everyone moved on. Her biological dad still refuses to believe it. My mom wasn't looking for family, but she said it still stings a bit. She does sometimes talk to her half-sister though. How do I tell my host mom about her son's weird behavior? I feel like she won't believe me, and I don't know what to do. Original post, July 1st, 2024. I never thought this would happen. I cannot sleep tonight because of how helpless I feel in this situation. I am an au pair. I started at 19, went to Australia, and took care of 2 little girls, and I loved it. After a year, I came back home and went to college. But I decided that I wanted to travel again because I'm interested in teaching English abroad one day. I met a really great family on an accredited website that I used last time for my au pair match. I met a German family. They really liked me and I really liked them and the area. I have always wanted to go to Germany, so after about 3 months of talking and making sure there was no other family I wanted to go with more, we went through with it. Now I am in Germany, and I have been here for 2 months. They have 3 children, all boys, including a 1-year-old who is the cutest thing on earth, a 14-year-old who is friendly and sweet, and a 17-year-old who I do not really provide much care for. He kept to himself a lot and did not talk much with me, which I did not mind because I'm mainly there for the 2 younger ones. But some weird things started happening. I began to notice that he started staring at me a lot whenever we were alone, or even at family dinner. He walks up to me at times and it sounds like he's asking me questions in German, but I can't understand him. The oldest boys can speak English. When I tell him I don't understand him, he just walks away. I asked his brother once what he asked, and he said it was something bad, and he's told his brother to stop, but he won't listen. Then, over these past 2 weeks, he's made accidental contact with me. Sometimes he will brush up against me even when there's enough room for us to not bump into each other. 1 or 2 times, when this happened, I felt something on my waist, like his hand, but I thought maybe it was an accident. Now that they're out of school, we're alone at the house during the day while the parents work, and sometimes when I'm playing with the baby he will come and play with the baby too, but he will be very close to me, Like to the point where I have no personal space. I have had to tell him a few times to give me space, and his younger brother has even said the same thing. Still, for some reason, I thought maybe he was just shy before and was starting to get comfortable with me. I did not want to jump to conclusions or label him as anything, so most of this I have let go. I really like hanging out with the baby and playing board games and other activities with the 14-year-old. He is a funny, nice kid. But the bad thing that really happened was yesterday. The family went for a walk, and I stayed behind because I had bad cramps. The oldest boy also said he did not feel like walking, so he stayed behind. We were there alone, and after they had left I tried to go to my room, but he blocked me. I kept asking him to move, but he kept blocking me. The look on his face, like he thought it was funny, scared me. He would not speak English with me when I kept asking him why he was doing this, and at this point, I felt scared and decided to walk the other way. I was going to hide in a bathroom until the others came back. But then he grabbed my arm and forced my body against his. I do not know if it was a forced hug or what, but I tried to pull away, but he reacted by tightening his grip, so I just froze. He let me go after a few seconds and just left the room. When the family came back, I went into my room for the night because I felt like I would just start crying in front of them. I do not know what I should do. I feel ashamed that I could not fight him off, and that I am literally being harassed by a boy so much younger than me. I am scared to tell the host parents because I can tell they love their son a lot, and at the end of the day, I am just a random girl that they have only known for 2 months. I am torn because I love the younger two so much already and wanted to have a good time in Germany. But this boy is acting so weird. I do not know why he went from basically ignoring me to doing this. I know that despite all of this I should probably try to talk to the host parents, probably my host mom, as I am more comfortable sharing this with her. But I just do not know how to bring that up. How do I basically tell her that her son did something really weird to me? I never thought I would have to do this or be in a situation like this, and I need some help. Please. Too long. Didn't read. I am an au pair. One of the boys who I live with has consistently been doing weird things to me, and yesterday, he forced me into a hug. I know I probably need to tell the host parents, but I don't know what to even say. I feel so helpless and alone right now. Update, July 3, 2024. Hello, I posted not so long ago about a really bad situation. I hope that it's okay for me to post an update even though it was removed. I received a lot of people reaching out to me asking if I was okay and if I could provide an update, so I wanted to give some closure. In short, I am an au pair in Germany and was being harassed by my host parent's son, who is 17 years old. He basically assaulted me, and although it is still hard for me to come to full terms with that word, I now know that it was, in fact, what it was. Yesterday was my day off, and after reading through everyone's advice, I contacted my agency that morning. I made sure to first get out of the house so no one would overhear me and to get away from the older boy. The younger boy, who is 14 years old, asked me if he could go with me as I was going to the library, and I did not mind taking him. Although technically he could go by himself, I see older children walking around alone a lot in Germany, but he specifically kept asking to go with me, and like I said before, he is a really good kid to be around, so I did not mind. I was planning to go to a closed-off area and make my phone calls while he went around looking for books, but while we were walking to the library, I could tell he wanted to say something. After a while, I asked if there was anything wrong, and after a bit of a pause, he asked me nervously if I was okay and if anything had happened yesterday. He said he was wondering why he did not see me at all anymore after they came back home. I did not say anything at first because I did not want to tell him inappropriate information. I told him I just had bad cramps, which was true, and wanted to sleep. But he is a smart kid, and I think he knew, because he asked if it was because of his older brother. When I did not say anything, as I was so caught off guard by his questions, he asked if I was leaving. He honestly looked so sad. He said he was sorry and that he hoped I did not have a bad impression of Germany now. I almost cried because of how depressed he sounded. I told him not to worry about it and that it had nothing to do with Germany, him, or the baby, and that I would be okay. So I finally contacted my agency when we arrived at the library. I was so nervous that I was shaking when I made the call, but they were amazing, and took everything I was saying seriously. I just told them that the oldest child was making me feel unsafe, and in vague terms what happened, without going into too much detail. They understood, thankfully, what I meant and told me that they would work on replacing me, if that's what I wanted. They also said they would reach out to the family to let them know of what was happening and of my concern with their son. I then called my mom. Being a mother, after I told her everything that had happened, she yelled at me a little. Not in an abusive way, but for not telling her sooner, and told me very sternly that I was not going back to that house tonight. Even being an adult, I don't argue with my mom when she uses that type of tone. She sounded so frantic, and sent me money to stay at a hotel for a while until they found me a new placement, even though she really just wanted me to come home. I felt a lot better after talking to her. After a while, the younger boy came back over and told me, very plainly, I am going to tell Mom. He would not listen to me when I told him not to, or not to put himself in that situation. I can handle it. He seemed very angry. He tried to reassure me that his parents would listen, and that they know that older brother causes trouble sometimes. They had another girl, a few years ago, that left because of him, and everyone thought maybe since he'd grown up and changed it would be different. I stayed at the library while he went home, and just waited. I did not know what was going to happen. I already had a hotel booked by then and knew I would probably need to go back to get my stuff. About an hour and a half later, I left the library. Since the parents were at home today, I felt somewhat safe going back to get my stuff. Before I got back, I received a call. It was from my host mom. When I answered, she was very frantic. She asked me if I was okay, and where I was. When I got to the house, the parents were in somewhat of an argument. I didn't understand all of it, because they went between German and English, but I heard some words like, not again, and ruining. In short, the mother pulled me aside. She said that she wasn't aware that the oldest son was still like this. She begged me not to leave. She told me she wanted her two youngest sons to have healthy attachments to their caregivers, and that it was very hard for them to do this with the oldest. She was actually crying during all of this, and told me she doesn't know why he acts like that, but she did not raise him like that. And that while she loved her son, she was not going to tolerate that behavior anymore. She said that once he turns 18 next week, I had no idea his birthday was next week, he will have to go live with his uncle and cousin in the Netherlands, for the sake of everyone in the house. She told me the parents, discussed it a bit when the first incident happened, but since he seemed to act better, they dropped it at the time. When I asked where he was, she said that he left quickly when his brother came home, saying he was going to a friend's house. He probably will not be back, and she said that even if he does, she will not let him in, and will tell him to go to his aunt's, who lives not that far, until he can go to the Netherlands. She actually looked very sincere and stern when she said this, and even though the father looked like he was in shock, he agreed with what she said. I did not know how to respond to them. It was not the reaction I was expecting, but I wanted to be honest. I told her that I was going to stay at a hotel for a while, and that she would probably hear from the agency. I told her that I loved the two younger boys, but I might not be back. She said she understood but would appreciate it if I at least thought about it for a day or two. Before I left, I hugged the baby and the 14-year-old goodbye. So that is what happened. I am safe in the hotel now. I didn't at all expect that reaction from them. I felt almost sick with worry when I wrote my first post. Of not being believed. But even though the oldest boy probably won't be back and will eventually be forced to leave, I still feel the effects of what happened lingering. I still feel vulnerable and overwhelmed when I even think about what happened. I feel so bad for the younger children. I'm not sure if I should go back or not. She told me to think about it. I will give it some time and see what my agency says first about other placements. I just wanted to thank everyone for helping me through something really difficult. But I am safe now in this hotel and am not going to rush back into any situation without thinking over my options and asking for my mom's opinion. Thank you once again. Too long, didn't read. I contacted my agency and mom. Both listened and took me seriously. I am now safe in a hotel, and am waiting for my agency to get back with me on possible placements. My mom is helping support me financially and emotionally while I wait. The host parents find out about what happened. The 14-year-old told them, and reacted in a way I did not expect. They are begging me to stay, saying that the oldest boy will be sent to live with relatives for his behavior once he turns 18. I am not sure if I will go back, although I miss the younger two. I am going to wait until my agency gets back with me first before taking next steps. Thank you to everyone who reached out and helped me. Added comments. Commenter, as a German, this post infuriates me. First of all, therapy is free here. It sounds like the parents did absolutely nothing when this happened for the first time. They just hoped and thought their son got better. Secondly, the fact that they just want to get rid of their son by pushing him onto someone else instead of wanting him to face actual consequences, like going to the police with OP, is also infuriating. German police aren't perfect, but my own experiences with them have been genuinely good, and I want to encourage OP to go to the police. Lastly, the parents are trying to make OP stay in a house where she was assaulted. That alone is so utterly tone deaf that it's hard to believe. Sorry, Netherlands. OP. Yeah, I've officially made up my mind that I'm not going back there. It hurts because I do love the younger children so much. I hope they will be okay. The kids I watch become a part of me in a way. I still keep in contact with the family from Australia, and the younger ones here really seemed comfortable around me. The mom even said they usually aren't as open at first with new people like they were with me. I might still keep the host mom's contact info just to see if I can check up on them every now and then, purely for that purpose. Now that I'm really reflecting on it, it was a little strange that she still wanted me to stay after what happened. I thought maybe, for my mental health, she would encourage me to leave. But I think she is desperate for an au pair since they work a lot. It's amazing that therapy is free. I will suggest to the host mom that maybe the 14-year-old might need someone to talk to. I made sure to tell him that I was not abandoning him, and he seemed to understand. He is very level-headed for his age. I know he will continue to grow into an even more amazing young adult as he gets older. He told me he wouldn't forget me, and he would tell his baby brother about me a lot, so he will always remember too. It's also good to hear about the police. I always worry about being a foreign girl and not being taken seriously in another country. I am going to reach out to the Weiser Ring, like another poster suggested, and see if they can help me in that aspect. I feel bad for the people that might encounter him in the Netherlands, but I heard they don't play around there. So I hope he gets some sense into him soon. But there are vulnerable girls and women everywhere, so it does leave me with a sad feeling. OP makes another update in the comments. To give an update, I spoke with the agency sometime earlier today and asked them if there have been other au pairs with this family. They said this is their first time placing someone with the family, and if another au pair was with the family before, it was probably through another agency, but they had no knowledge of this, and when they interviewed the family was told this was a new experience for them. I am thinking maybe the other girl was through another agency. There are a few of them. I'm not sure that all au pair agencies can see each other's networks, but they said they will look further into it. They told me that for now, they will not be placing any new girls with this family, so that gave me some peace of mind. OP makes another update in the comments. To give an update, I spoke with the agency sometime earlier today and asked them if there have been other au pairs with this family. They said this is their first time placing someone with the family, and if another au pair was with the family before, it was probably through another agency, but they had no knowledge of this, and when they interviewed the family was told this was a new experience for them. I am thinking maybe the other girl was through another agency. There are a few of them. I'm not sure that all au pair agencies can see each other's networks, but they said they will look further into it. They told me that for now, they will not be placing any new girls with this family. So that gave me some peace of mind.
I found out that my mother and my fiancé had been having sex for the past few years, leading up to the birth of my younger brother. My fiancé, 25, and myself, 24, have been together since we were 17-18 years old. Honestly, he was always kind, handsome, funny, and everyone used to say I was so lucky to have the whole package. I felt so lucky too. He always treated me with love and respect, so this makes everything just so shocking for me. I have always had a good relationship with my mom. It has always been her and I against the world. My dad died in an accident when I was little. We always joke that we are the real-life Rory and Lorelai from Gilmore Girls. My mom dated guys on and off and they were usually cool but nothing really past the early stages. Around 4 years ago my mom told me she was pregnant, which was a huge surprise. My mom was around 42 years old and although she was sort of dating someone recently, didn't meet the guy but knew she went on dates, it still was a big shock. She never thought she could be pregnant at her age. She had me when she was super young, an oopsie, and I can tell she was stressed and worried. I decided to support her, since she has always supported me, and tried to reassure her. She then had my brother, who is now 3 years old. I have a close relationship with my brother. I have helped take care of him since he was born, and I just love the little guy. My fiancé was also always helpful with my brother. We would take him out for ice cream, playground, pool time during summer, etc. But nothing was weird. He was just my then BF, spending time with my brother and I. Now to how I found out. My fiancé and I have been living together since we finished college. He was not at home because he was hanging out with friends, but I stayed home because I didn't feel like going out and just wanted to relax on the sofa. At some point during binge watching a series on Netflix, my laptop died, and I was too lazy to get my charger, so I used my fiancé's iPad instead. I know the password but had never used it before. The iPad logged in, and I received a bunch of message notifications. I guess he hasn't used it in a while either. Anyway, this got my attention, and I went to check it out, and of course, I found everything. My mom's number wasn't saved under her name, but I recognized it and verified it with my phone. She was telling him she felt guilty and that I should know. He said he also felt guilty but couldn't lose me and that they messed it up. She said it was unfair for my brother to never know his dad and asked if he could live having his son around, not behaving like a dad but as a brother-in-law. I broke down. What the actual F? There weren't a lot of older messages, just some photos stored of my brother as a newborn, my mom pregnant, and more photos of my brother growing up in an album. I couldn't anymore. I cried for what seemed like ages, and I waited for my BF to come back home. I wish I was one of those women that can pretend and get things together before confronting the cheater, but I can't. He came back later that night, around 23:30, and I just gave him the iPad with the conversation opened and saw his face completely go pale. I asked for an explanation. When? How? Why? And he didn't want to at first, but knew he had to. Apparently a few years back, while I was traveling with some friends, girls trip, my fiancé and mom had dinner together. This isn't strange since he has been part of the family for so long. Sometimes mom and fiancé would eat together at our place even if I was busy with sports or out. I did the same with his parents. Somehow, unclear how, since he couldn't explain it well, one thing led to another and they ended up sleeping together. They felt guilty but apparently not guilty enough. BC they slept together 2-3 more times, using the excuse of meeting up to discuss how to tell me. Apparently when my mom got pregnant they stopped sleeping together and decided to not tell me, since my fiancé loved me and couldn't lose me, and my mom didn't want to lose her daughter. So here we are now, with two of the most disgusting humans. I obviously broke the engagement, told my mom to never talk to me again and move in with a friend. I feel bad for my brother since I really love him, but I can't be around him now, I just can't. I feel like it would remind me of all those times we talked about having kids. I would be his baby mama, only baby mama. We talked about this future since we were 17 years old, so I want to puke every time I think how I was actually taking care of his child with someone else, while still having those dreams. I want to puke. Editor's note. Comments were mostly supportive, with a few telling their own stories of cutting parents off and a couple with tales of spouses sleeping with parents. How is this even a thing? People are crazy. Update 1, to the update. As I was afraid, I was indeed confronted near my office this week. I knew this was coming but thought maybe I had more time. My ex was the person to come find me. Yesterday, Wednesday, after finishing work and walking to where my car was parked, my ex was sort of lingering, waiting around. I thought about running. Not gonna lie, but I guess in the moment I felt strong enough to get over it, instead of having that hanging above my head waiting to be approached again. He asked if we could talk and I said yes, but I didn't feel like having that conversation over coffee like we were old friends. It felt ridiculous, so I told him to just talk right there. We were in the streets but somehow it wasn't crowded, but also not completely lonely. Felt right. He basically said sorry 100 times and that I deserved better. I agreed. He said he did love me and that he still does, but he would understand why I wouldn't want anything to do with him. He said that if I did in fact consider giving him a chance, that he would go to therapy, alone or together or both, and that he would work hard to win my trust back. I told him it wasn't possible. There was too much damage. This sounds calm when I type it, but in the moment things came out more with louder tone and harsher words. Anyways, he did say that he is in the or will be, it was a bit of a blur, process of getting custody, partly, from my brother, and that he in fact does want to be a dad to him. He said he does not want to be together with my mom, that it was just a stupid mistake. Sure, BC 4-5 times is just a random thing. He couldn't explain why he did it in the first place. I think he doesn't even know himself. I asked if he cheated with someone else before. He said no, Not sure if to believe it, but he sounded honest. I asked why he didn't come clean, and he said that after he did the deed he always felt panicked and it hit him that he could lose me and he just didn't want to. I told him it was meant to be found out, that what was his plan? To have my brother around and ignore their relationship forever? He said he didn't think far enough and that he was basically going with the idea one day at the time. I asked him if he felt that my mom seduced him. He said it was mutual, which made me want to puke again. I asked if he has had any contact with my mom since I found out. He said yes, but mostly about my brother, didn't elaborate more, and I didn't press for more info on that. He said he told his parents the day before, or the day before that, not sure, Tuesday, about everything. The parents were not happy, but they are glad to start building a relationship with my brother, their grandkid. Honestly, all of this felt like a punch in my stomach. I don't know why. The parents wanted to contact me, but he told them to wait till he approached me first, hence why he was here. I said if he started or thought about the custody before I found out, and he said no, but when I found out was like the push he needed. Great. Seems I helped him get his shit together. And this past week he was arranging all of that mess, that's why he hasn't tried to see me before. He sounded and looked defeated, but the whole thing made me, besides sad, angry. I was mainly depressed before, but now I'm furious. I feel like he is still in an okay place and he isn't paying for his actions, beyond me leaving him. He will have my brother, his parents and others and move on with his life. While I lost everything. I hate him. We parted ways not on a happy note, and I told him to never get near me again. I was done. He asked me to see my brother still, that I was important to him, and tried to guilt trip me, and it worked, but I still think I can't. I don't know much about my mom and really hope she doesn't come find me anytime soon because I'm fuming right now and won't be able to handle it. I will be contacting my family and friends and finally doing the blasting today. I think it is about time, and after my talk with him, I got the extra push I needed. Editor's note. Top comment suggested moving to Australia. Can't fault that line of thinking. Update 2. A lot has happened. I did the blasting, and this is how it went down. I first posted on my family's FB group we share. This is from my mom's family side. I used inspiration of what you all suggested in my last post and said something around the lines of, I want to communicate to you all that my wedding with X has been permanently cancelled, since I found out that my mom, name, and my ex, name, had in the last few years a sexual relationship which resulted in the birth of my little brother, name. I had no clue of any of this, and I found out about it last week. I won't have a relationship with, name, mom, and ex, name, for obvious reasons. I would appreciate your understanding, and I felt it was only fair to let you know of the situation. Since I value transparency and honesty above all. I also included a screenshot of my mother's message, what I said to her once I found out, and a message she managed to write back before I blocked her. Didn't open the message till before the blasting. I didn't want to read her and be persuaded. It exploded. I had family reaching out via text and calling the whole day after the blasting. I would say most were very supportive, and I could tell they were just shocked. There were a few neutral and some suspicious that it wasn't the whole story and maybe I misunderstood. My grandparents were in the maybe you misunderstood category, which wasn't surprising since my mom is super close to my grandparents, and like I said before, my mom was always a good mom. So no red flags. I will be moving with a cousin that is more like a sister to me. I haven't reached out to her previously because I knew once she knew everyone would. That's why I went to my friend's place. My cousin is devastated on my behalf and offered to live with her and her 2 kids until I can get my feet on the ground. I accepted and will be moving next week. I'm a bit afraid this will give my mom an easier access to me, but I can't stay at my friend's place forever. I then proceeded quickly to post a similar message for my, we share most of our friends since high school and local university, friends on Instagram. I created a close friends story and tagged most of them too. This went sort of viral in our friend group. Actually, one of my friends sent me my Reddit post and asked if this was me. I confirmed. They were also shocked and speechless. They never thought my ex would even remotely do anything like this. They said he was crazy about you. Oh well, apparently he went overboard on the crazy part. The group of friends is divided ATM, some are completely on my side, and some are thinking it isn't the whole truth. I told everyone that reached out that if they don't believe me to ask their friend if he is asking for custody of my little brother. That kinda shut them up for now. My ex deleted his social media. Also, my ex's parents called me like I guessed they would. They were kind to me and were very sorry about everything. I got the feeling they are also overwhelmed and very disappointed. However, it was clear they will be supporting their son. They are very upset at my mother, and don't want anything to do with her, but not sure how that will work with my little brother and everything else. They tried to give me info about the custody and what is my ex up to now, but I shut that down quickly and told them I don't want any info, I want to move on. I also asked them to not reach out in the near future, that I needed distance, especially if they will be supporting my ex, he is living with his parents ATM. Also my ex and my mother after the blast were going nuts trying to reach out to me. They tried calling my friend, who she blocked them, and reaching out from different numbers. I had to put my phone on silent and ignore everyone. However, my mother sent me a long text, from another number, and that was a weird text. She said that I was being cruel and that she didn't think she raised me that way. She said she thought we had a better relationship than me blasting out laundry like that without talking to her first. That I didn't have the whole picture. She did mention something that confused me. She said in her long-ass text, that the reason she slept with my ex, is because he reminded him of my dad. That it was grief. That she didn't mean to use him to heal her pain, but she wasn't strong enough. I don't even know what that means. Like, did she think that my ex looks physically like my dad? Or personality? Or what? I have seen photos of my dad, and well, yay, my ex isn't super different but also not super alike. I mean, they share brown dirty blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin. But that's not so uncommon. I don't see what else. I don't know. That threw me for a loop and honestly makes me want to confront my mom just to know what the hell. From all the things she could say, I was not expecting that. I'm holding on better, I don't cry every hour or want to murder them. But I'm still sad and upset, and it just feels like it isn't my life, that it is a big joke or a bad dream and I will wake up to my normal life. I also need to really start planning my future and start applying for jobs in other cities, or maybe check the possibilities abroad more seriously. I might ask for 2-3 days off work to really get my thoughts together and do some research. I'm terrified tbh. I feel frozen, but I know I need to start moving. Editor's note, this one has some funny comments. Commenter 1, that mom is hilarious. I thought I raised you better. I never in a million years thought you'd fuck my boyfriend, but here we are. Commenter 2, my petty ass would be sending her that. Commenter 3, right. The irony of her blaming you for airing laundry when she did that. Commenter 4, the laundry wouldn't be dirty if you hadn't fucked my boyfriend on it. My wife will not shut up and I'm not sure I can take it that much longer. Is it possible for that to be a reason to leave? I'm not sure if I should have posted this on AITA instead. But here goes. My wife will not shut up. I'm not talking about your usual chatty Kathy. I mean, she almost literally will not shut up. She will talk continuously from the moment she knows I am within earshot. Not just in the same room. I mean, as soon as it's reasonable to assume that I can hear her. She will not stop talking until I'm gone, and sometimes not even then. On more than one occasion, I've gone into the bathroom, turned on the loud exhaust fan, taken a leisurely dump and then returned to hear her cheerfully engaged in the same conversation she was enjoying before I went in. She also refuses to use the exhaust fan while she's in the restroom because it would prevent her from being heard. So I get to hear all the bathroom noises on top of whatever Homeric epic about her friend's cousin's girlfriend's hairdresser she's blathering on about. I once drove from Tampa, Florida to Chicago, Illinois with her, before we were married. I'm such an idiot. Without saying more than 10 sentences. She did not stop talking the entire way. The entire way. Television onto a show I like? Pfft, that's not a problem. She'll happily turn the volume down so it doesn't get in the way. Having sex? That's the perfect time to tell me about how Olivia Newton-John still has the leather pants she wore in Greece and she, brace yourself, still fits in them, really. Needless to say, we don't go to the movies. Ever. I've been shushed out of too many theaters. I get it. She grew up in a huge Italian Catholic family in the Bronx. If you don't talk loud and constantly, you don't get to talk at all. I, on the other hand, grew up in a Scandinavian family with 2 children. To this day, I'm not sure we ever had a conversation in our house. I actually often wonder if that's what made me attractive to her. I was taught to politely listen to people and then wait for them to finish before replying. She never finishes, or takes a breath it sometimes seems. So to her I'm paying rapt attention to her no matter how much she talks. That's not true though. Another difference between people of Swedish heritage is that we don't use filler words for acknowledgement. Other than the Minnesota nah, useful on every occasion, we're pretty much silent when we listen to others. No or yeah or OMG needed. A nod of the head every 10 minutes or so is all you need to convey your attentiveness. I think it has a lot to do with living in the frigid north. You keep your mouth open as much as my wife does, and your teeth are going to shatter from the cold. To her, that's like being in the room with a dead person. She's always stopping to ask, "Are you even listening?" Or say, "You never pay attention to me." Or even quiz me with, "What did I just say?" I've become an expert at storing the last 2 to 4 words she says and parroting them back at her. She'll be like, "Blah blah blah." And then she told him she wasn't taking that kind of crap anymore. And I'll go, "That kind of crap?" As if I had any idea what kind of crap it was or who it was that wouldn't take it anymore. And she'll say, "Yeah," and think I've been paying attention the whole time. I joke about it a lot, but it's actually getting to the point where it's a problem. Our son is 7 years old, and he has developed a pronounced stutter because she interrupts him constantly. Growing up in her house, if anyone paused even for a millisecond, that was grounds for talking over them. And you talked loud so they didn't finish. My son apparently inherited some of my less staccato speech patterns, and she basically just uses that to interrupt and take over the conversation. It got so bad that he started automatically stopping and restarting words, even when not being interrupted. I didn't know that was considered a stutter until we went to one of those parent-teacher night things, and a teacher listened to wife and then turned to me and said, "Well, at least now I know why Josh has a stutter." Just like that. She's failed at least one job interview because of this. I know because I lined it up with a business acquaintance myself. He called me up and said sorry, but he just couldn't take being in the same room with her because she wouldn't stop talking. We rarely are invited for a second couple's date. She monopolizes the conversation every time we go out with other people. Who wants more than one does of that? You're probably wondering, well, have you told her about this? Yes. Many times. Sometimes jokingly. Sometimes with utter seriousness. The reactions vary from anger, talks louder, higher, faster, and uses lots more swear words, to tears. She's the only person I know who can carry on a totally unrelated conversation while sobbing hysterically. The one thing that doesn't happen is her talking any less. I try not to let it get to me. She's a very affectionate woman. Loves me to death. Mother of my child. Pretty as the day we met, prettier even. We still get plenty of alone time. Granted, she won't shut up while we're doing it, but I'm pretty busy so I don't really notice as much. But it does get to me. It's selfish and shows a lack of self-awareness. There's a time and a place for enthusiastic conversation, and they're not always and everywhere. I know the answer to the problem. I have to talk back. In effect, the only thing that possibly could shut her up is for me to do the same thing as she does. I would have to interrupt at the slightest pause. I would have to talk louder, yelling if necessary, when she tries to interrupt me. I would have to learn to use Italian hand gestures to emphasize my points and chop off her objections. But I'm not Italian. I'm a waspy pale dude who grew up in a household that would have made a mortuary sound like a middle school cafeteria. 12 years of this has finally pushed me to the brink. I'm not sure I can take it that much longer. I'm just not sure if I could get a word in to tell the judge why I'm there in his divorce court. My wife wouldn't let me. TL.dr. Wife will not shut up. Is that reasonable grounds for leaving her? Edit, obligatory Reddit. OMG, I had no idea this would blow up. Which is true. I thought maybe a couple of people would just call me an asshole and that would be it. But RIP. Inbox. It was nice to know you. So in the interest of not replying to every comment, I will try to address some of the common ones and answer some of the questions I saw popping up multiple times. Also thanks for the, often hilarious, advice. Q1. Is this BS? Implied. A1. No, it's all mostly true. I admit to some embellishment for dramatic comedic effect though. The bit about the leather pants is representative, not an actual quote. Not from Sexy Times anyway. She probably mentioned it at some point though. Q2. Why didn't you run away screaming before you got married? Sub-question. Was OP's wife hot? A2. Yes, she is hot, and funny, and vivacious. Also, I really was a Nordic silent bear. Thanks, you/Sarah_Dragonfire, my wife drew me out of my shell. And if I'm brutally honest with myself, when you're young and getting laid on the regular, a lot of things don't seem all that terrible. Damn you penis, this is all your fault. Q3. Did your kid really develop a stutter because of this? A3. Medically speaking, I cannot state this with 100% certainty. The cause was never formally diagnosed. However, I watched it happen firsthand. I'm not a qualified speech therapist, but I think it was a reasonable conclusion to draw based on the observations I made. I'd welcome a dissenting opinion from an actual professional though, if only to salve my conscience. Which leads to, Q4. Aren't you really the one responsible for your kid's stutter? After all, you did nothing to stop it. A4. Guilty. And I feel utterly like shit about it all the time. For the record, I did bring it up lots of times, even to the point of getting into arguments about it and speaking harshly to my wife when she interrupted my son. But I think by the time I realized it was happening, most of the damage was done. And anything I could do was more expressing my anger about it than actually making an effective change. All the rest of this weirdly long post is just ranting. If there's an actual justification for leaving, this is it, and I'm deathly afraid that she'll get full custody and just make it worse or even irreparable. Q5. Is it because she's, pick one, OCD, insecure, autistic, mentally ill? A 5. I don't think so, although I've always sensed an overwhelming need for attention. I see it in her family dynamic, in that all of her many siblings were in constant competition for their parents' attention and affection. Q6. Have you tried counseling? A 6. No, probably should have, but I know her well enough that even mentioning it would shatter her. It's bizarre that I can't bring myself to do a lot of things people have suggested, and believe me, I've probably thought of all of them, because they just seem too cruel to me. And yet, I'm seriously considering divorce. I realize the contradiction there.